Good morning. The Finance Committee meeting is called to order on April 16th. Happy birthday, Devin, at 9:39 a.m. To my right, I have Alderwoman Finlayson, and to my left, Alderwoman O'Neill as attending. And we are also graced with the attendance of Alderwoman Pendle-Charles and Alderman Arnett. At this time, I'll accept a motion to accept today's agenda.
Madam Chair, move approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
At this time, I'll accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes from yesterday, April 15th,
So moved.
Second.
except for the spelling of manager. Sorry, manager, sorry. Typo. Sheila's rubbing off on me. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to get right to it. And we have two departments today. We're going to just have one break in between. And that is the Department of Human Resources. So whenever you're ready, you can introduce yourself, anyone else you need to introduce, and get started.
Well, my support is behind me, but I am Tricia Hopkins, the Human Resources Manager.
You'd have to bring everybody in.
Yeah, I would, because we all are in it together. Great support in the Human Resources Office. So I'll go through our budget. So I don't know how much focus we want to get on all the individual parts. If you have questions about really what we do, our mission is very clear. We are absolutely dedicated to our employees, to our retirees, and then anybody else that aspires to be part of the City of Annapolis family. And we do that by trying to make sure that we have a workforce that has really robust benefits, as we know, during the class and comps study, is part of trying to set pay rates that are reasonable, that we can afford in this area, and that we offer training that's supportive of our employees for both their advancement and maintaining their skills here. Thankfully, this current budget provided us additional monies to do so, and we are actively spending that money in a really good direction, which I'll get into later. So we also pride ourselves on working very closely with our departmental partners. We hope that we exhibit some understanding of what it is they do, so that when we're recruiting, we understand the mission and the expectations there. I work with them on changing job descriptions, actively doing that as part of a robust and overall class and comp study, and that when we are engaged in understanding situations, we make sure that the policies that we're referring to, the laws, the body of work that's out there at the federal, state, and local level, as well as our union negotiations, is properly understood and integrated and given good advice in that regard. So we hope that we're also, as part of that, being very good stewards of this city's financial health. For us in Human Resources, that means being an active member of the Police and Fire Retirement Commission, as well as working very, very closely with our insurance broker to make sure that our benefits are both good and affordable. And we've done really well. For the last 3 years, we've seen no premium increases for our employees, and that's part of that really close relationship we have with our insurance broker and the work that we've done there.
I'm sorry, was that, what premium are you referring to?
Health insurance?
Health.
Yes,
Okay.
which is a significant expense in our city budget. So I think you know pretty much what we do. I'll dive into it if necessary. I think you probably have other things you'd rather have information on. So as you can tell, we have, with that robust benefit program, there are many elements of it that we manage good working relationships with the vendors and with our insurance broker to ensure that. There's a lot that we do they can't really talk about. You know, I can't give you detail on all of the work that we do in employee relations and advice and guidance around improving employees' situations that aren't always in the positive for those individuals or for supervisors, and that a lot of what we resolve around employee issues with regard to benefits is private as well. So know that it's done. I just can't tell you about it. So we're actively engaged in collective bargaining as well. We work with our labor attorney for public safety. We are trying to navigate that with a great ambition, you know, in terms of the things that we're trying to change, trying to dovetail the class and comp work along with the collective bargaining effort, and we're moving along. We also make sure that the retirement plan is properly administered. You know, that includes making sure that when we sit down at collective bargaining, we're also revisiting the retirement plan document for police and fire so that those benefits are robust and indicative of what we've come to agreement on. We clearly have overlay from federal and now state law. We get into the sick and safe leave and then incoming Time to Care Act, which has been delayed again in the legislature, but nonetheless, we've got to be prepared. So I'm really proud of our training that we're doing this year. We have managed to get Microsoft training at both the Excel and the Word level at different levels in our partnership with a community college. Today, as we speak, is yet another session of our Inclusion Plus training, which we are very happy to deliver. It's a really important peg in culture support and change here. And that's not to say that we're not a good workplace culturally. I think that we've been tested a little bit and exhibited that in some amazing ways. But what I'm really pleased about with our trainer is that it's not just education around inclusionary language and behavior, it's also about the apology. So what we've worked closely with our training developer on is making sure that, okay, you're going to trip up, but how do you recover from that? And how do you go on forward from that? And how to do a good apology. So we also support our Civil Service Board. Thank you so much for the passage of the change. So what the Civil Service Board gets to do is meaty work instead of reviewing all of our job descriptions. That was a critical change for us so that we can implement this class and comp study. And then although we haven't had any activity with our Public Safety Disability Retirement Board, that remains a board that's under our oversight. And we work really closely with the Human Relations Commission. And so one of the benefits for that relationship is that we're also making sure the Human Relations Commission is going through our Inclusion Plus training. And then we're assisting them as well in training in hate crimes and some other work that they're doing around their mission for fair housing. We also, you'll notice in our budget later on, we listen to our Employee Recognition Committee. We have been really static in what we have funded for our employee party, where we recognize Employee of the Month and Employee of the Year during the holiday times. And so more money has been put in the budget to make that a better experience. This is how we're stacked up. Obviously, I'm the Human Resources Manager. Tara Kimbo is the deputy level position, the Human Resources Administrator, and then direct reports to me are the Benefits Administrator, the Recruitment and Employee Relations Administrator, that's Laurie and Claudia respectively, and then you'll note in the budget we've asked for an additional position. I can go into detail about that now or later, whatever you prefer. And then the direct report to our Human Resources Office Administrator, Dee Creek, is both of our support staff positions, which is our Human Resources Associate, Robin, and then our vacancy, which one of the things we learned in the class and comp study was undervalued. And so there's a request to enhance that position appropriately for what impact it has in our HR office. We are in the final phases of implementing NeoGov as an applicant tracking system. Our Munis applicant tracking has not been working too well for a while now, which has led that our performance standard of higher level of online applications compared to hard copy deteriorate a bit because individuals were having access issues with that online application system. So when I worked for the county, was implemented NeoGov there. It is an incredible tool. It will help us tremendously in many ways, and it'll be a better resource for the departments. Necessarily, that's going to put some additional responsibilities and duties on the Human Resources Office, and that's in part a request for the additional position, but it is robust. We are at the stage where it's ready to go, but it will require all of our position descriptions to be loaded on that. So we're kind of putting our hand on it for a moment so that all of the job descriptions, of which we have over 200, will need to be finalized, put into a spreadsheet, and then uploaded into the applicant tracking system. Training's already ready, will be rolled out as well, and that will move on nicely. You know, there's a lot to manage at the same time, but I feel that if I can get my fingers around it without the frustration of not happening exactly when I want it to happen, I can at least make sure it's an integrated one and it's not something you have to do and redo. So that's where we are with that. The class and comp study is, as we know, very much underway. They've completed all the market analysis. We have used the market analysis to make our pay scale recommendations and also to what we took into bargaining. We did that back in January. They are still finalizing the job description. Some of that just requires back and forth with departments, and their time is a resource as well. That's part of the timeline. So that's moving forward. Again, I mentioned already the legislation to remove the Civil Service Board from job description review. Thank you so much. We are also a partner to the development of NeoGov coming up. We're not undertaking a few things here, but like taking the whole ball of wax here. And so there's a new HRIS payroll system that's coming in. As part of that development and an overlay with what we call Insight, which is the applicant tracking component, we developed something called Core HR. So Core HR got done first. That was necessary then to flow into applicant tracking and then to ultimately bring the Human Resources Information System and payroll into line. Another element I'm very proud of is that we've moved forward in executive leadership training, and a very particular leadership training. And by that I mean it's forward focused. It's more of a what do we succeed at? What are we strong in? It's a mindset of not getting ourselves attached to the past and what went wrong, or what has been evaluated as inappropriate or not hitting the mark, but like really take good inquiry into where are we now, what do we need, does it align with our expectations, and then be supportive and forward-focused in our approach to that. That's happened at the executive level. We are now training supervisors in that as well. That will be in May and June, and all supervisors that have been identified, they will actually have the advantage, which I think, having been in situations where I've trained with people who are in different departments, they've already had their initial virtual meeting to prepare them for it because there's some homework to do. And that was good in terms of the interaction. This, I think, will also solidify us across the city in terms of that. We have, as part of, and I know you know this as well, the executive leadership participated in strategic planning together, and then we've had an action planning session based on the results of that strategic planning with the same trainer that we're using for the executive leadership training. That's already taken place. think I already mentioned about the Community College Partnership for Microsoft. We are soon to enter into open enrollment for health insurance. We've held off on premium holiday increases. Unfortunately, this year has to have a 5% increase in health premium. Some things you can't control are high claims and the impact of high claims on your experience rating. All of that goes into play. But I feel really confident that the work that we've done so far has definitely contributed to the overall health of that plan. We have had some taxation elements with our 401A plan and with our VIBA benefit, and we have been working very closely. Some elements are audit results, some are just recognizing a need to change. Some of our challenges have to do with the state's taxation rules and how those work for individuals. So we're working on that separately. We engage quarterly with all of our health partners so that we have a company that evaluates our plans and gives us data, which helps inform what we do and our choices that we make around our health insurance options. We also, with our pharmacy benefit management, we get rebates, and that has helped tremendously quarterly to give us some offsets to our costs for health insurance. I've worked very closely with the Police Reform Working Group, as that has implemented the police reform elements. We are soon to implement the trauma response evaluations or therapy intervention for our public safety partners. And so we're exploring also a cardiac care assessment for public safety so that we're catching people early. We've had 2 young retiree deaths in the police department, so we had the opportunity to be introduced to a program that does that. So we're looking very closely into that. Although I said that we are reviewing the possibility of bias training for the boards and commissions, we are, in fact, blending them into the Inclusion Plus training as a way to get there. We take advantage for them of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights trainings and have made sure that they know and understand that, and then we just make sure we follow through on this hate crime awareness training. We think that'll be a benefit to the community. Certainly will be a benefit to the Human Relations Commission. Ultimately, in partnership with the police department, may be something that could be of great service to them as well. We've already implemented the elements of FY24's collective bargaining agreement, and we're using some of those elements as we sit down and bargain in this current cycle. There's constant information requests that come in related to that, so we navigate all of that. I will say, in this era of transparency, as an HR manager, it makes me a little queasy when people ask for a lot of information about our employees, that we have to navigate that. We give what is legally required, but I just have to say out loud, it makes me queasy how much we kind of put our employees out there, their information. Promotional exams for police and fire is ongoing. That's a very sophisticated process for both police and fire. What we're finding too is that we've seen that you don't always have enough candidates to fill those lists, and in a couple of situations we've had to retest or recreate some recruitment processes in order to have active lists for for promotional opportunities. And then, of course, we do our standard issuing of the 1095 statements and all of our enrollment information necessary to comply with federal law. I probably got ahead of myself because I'm so excited about training, what we've been doing. One of the other things that we're doing with NeoGov is they have a learning management system, and that learning management system has well over 100 opportunities. So when we get to that phase of the implementation, that'll also be very much available to all of our employees for enhancement of their skills. And we're looking forward to that as well. So these are our performance standards. I covered some of them with you already. Is that large enough to see? I don't know if there's a way to actually make that bigger. So one of the things we've done already, even though we haven't rolled out the applicant management to the system itself, is along with enrolling in that insight through NeoGov is governmentjobs.com, which is like one of the highest rated government job boards out there. And that has really increased our applicant pool and has really given us an opportunity to get out into some other areas and markets that we do, but it just extends that reach. We haven't really done any more with social media presence, so that's really more of an opportunity. I've already said we do our quarterly meetings. We review all of our vendors. We make sure that we are in discussion already. The Time to Care Act is something that's been looming through the last 3 legislatures. And so what that is basically a paid family leave. And it doesn't line up perfectly with the federal family medical leave. And what it is designed to require is a contribution from the employer in order to fund that. The state did set that rate at 0.9%. And so the way it was designed, legally designed, although it's not, they've kind of pushed the can down the road again, is to share the cost of that between the employee and the employer. However, there's an element to it that allows you to, if we assumed all of the cost and provided a benefit that matched that, we wouldn't have to give the money to the state. We would be able to manage it ourselves. So we are in active communication with our leave management company, and I am highly pursuing other third-party options for that, so that also saves the city some money and and supports the city in that regard. It is not ready for implementation at the state level, but it's something we have to be ready for otherwise. So you see no funding attached to that this year. Again, we talked about the bias training. I'm hoping that we really ramp up the free offerings to employees with the learning management system when that's ready. All right, so here's our budget.
That last slide.
We had in FY23 a larger dollar amount in contractual services, because what that represented was consultant services for the class and comp study. We've fortunately gotten additional monies that gave us the robust ability to do training in FY24, our current year, and we are really doing well with that. We're happy to have that. We know that's the right thing to do. It's a great investment and the right investment in our employees. We have seen some price increases in some areas, so they've been blended in with our partners here. And our proposed budget, it looks like a reduction in FY25 in contractual services, but part of that was monies put aside for our class and comp work, which we're already in. It does allow us to keep monies robust for training, though, I will say that. Salaries and benefits shows an increase that's related to the additional positions and the upgrade of the one position. The supplies and other, the majority of that money that's showing there that's an increase. That was an increase in FY '24 and will be stayed in FY '25, is to increase the monies provided for the employee recognition celebration, and also for continuing, the money's still there for the summer interns, which we're happy about. We thought that was a great program last year. We'd love to see it every year. It was very well received, and just want to build on that success. So I'm going to go back to salaries and benefits because I know, and I saw Alderman Savage put a question in asking about the human resources analyst. The human resources analyst, I've seen what this year has, it was a big plate this year, but honestly, to not have such a plate upon us, I really have noted that our resources at the professional level aren't enough. And they aren't enough on a couple of fronts. Having an individual that has a generalist background, and by that I mean, I come from a generalist background, I see it as necessary in a smaller organization. So when you have skills in classification and compensation, when you can do recruitment, when you can support training initiatives, and you can support the real challenges that come with integrating information, researching, integrating, and doing good policy development with a good grounding in how an organization operates. That is such a value adding well across the organization. It's a challenge when you know you've got incredible talent that's managed to hold it together with their threads over time. But I think it's absolutely necessary to recognize that even though consultant services are all possible and good and wonderful to have, it's not the same as having somebody who's got that expertise in the instant to be able to support that. I will confess, I feel personally, professionally, horribly behind on things that really would advantage this organization. I feel that my generalist background and the skills I developed over a very long career, and I mean a very long career. I started my career here in 1979, so you can do the math. That is necessarily replaceable. And I mean that wholeheartedly. That is necessarily replaceable. And it's really, really important that we don't put too many eggs in just a couple of baskets. And so I'm asking for this addition of this position so that we can stabilize and that things can be put in place for any future transition. This hair is getting more silver every day. And while I'm committed to you while I'm here, I have to recognize that commitment needs to extend to legacy. And so I want very much to put things in place. Don't ever think of things only in terms of replacement. This is an evaluation of a high need for additional support in this department. One thing that I heard from the class and compensation professionals is that we are not robust enough there in our HR office. Any questions before I move forward?
We were saving the questions after you're
Okay.
you're done.
Just got a couple more slides. So all of the items that are listed as budget changes, I've already addressed. Our internship program funding is static. It's the same level that it was before. And thank you. It's my last slide.
Thank you so much. Just a reminder that the public isn't aware of Alderman Savage's questions, so that's why we're asking you to just respond to those in writing, and we'll get them documented by Kaylin. So just send the answers to me, and we'll get that. I just have a few questions. On the internship program, the same parameters as far as the number and all that will be the same?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
What is that?
What is that?
What is that number?
What is that number again?
90,500.
Oh, I mean, you wanted to know how many hours or?
That's the total amount requested?
Yes.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, how many interns does that cover?
So I believe that covered 20 interns.
Okay. Something I don't, maybe Jody can help me with this is, who carries the cost for all of this software, like the NeoGov and the actual
Answer you want.
software itself? I'm hearing a lot of software upgrades, et cetera, but,
So, with very few exceptions, it's in ITS budget.
okay,
They pay the bills, they work with the vendors to renew the contracts, et cetera.
okay, okay. So you have 2 exempt positions, and you probably always had that, and it never really caught my eye.
That's
but
true.
2 exempt.
Yeah.
And one is you, of course, and then the other is the recruitment. But you also have a human resource administrator at an A16. Is that the deputy position? Okay, okay. All right. And do we have any money for continuing ed for the employees or any kind of program for continuing ed?
Yes, we have, that is still funded in the coming year. So,
Okay.
so we will continue to do skills development. We will continue to offer the supervisory training, all appropriate.
So it's training, it's not like community college or anything like that? Hi, yes?
May I? Funny you should ask. Michael Malinoff, City Manager. I'll turn it over to Tricia, but we are discussing this very issue with the labor negotiations, and there's some nuances to the language, but I'll let Tricia discuss what
Whatever she can.
we're talking about, because it was part of our budget, but was taken out back in 2011-ish, something like that.
Quite a
Tricia?
while ago. So that, we had a tuition reimbursement program. We absolutely are thrilled to reconsider funding that. And the way it was designed in the prior was, there was like a graduated increase depending on what your grade was. It was tuition only. So I've done the research. I've seen what tuition really is in Maryland these days. And so we're redesigning it a bit and increasing the possible amounts for people to get as reimbursement. And we don't want to make a distinction. You pass the class, C or better. Let's not get into that. We recognize employees work hard. They try to balance their employment with their education. So we're moving differently from that. But we also would consider fees and the cost of books as part of that, so that people aren't deterred from pursuing that.
It's a weird one because you don't want them, well, you prefer them to stay with the city, so you're looking at how that would advance their career.
Very
with
much.
The city, yeah.
Very much.
And then the HRC commission, is it public to know how many complaints they received or any,
So that's part of their annual report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's
I
where
had
that would be.
somewhere, okay.
Yeah.
And general question, last one, how does this additional staff relate to achieving your performance measures?
It would thrill me.
What's that?
It would absolutely thrill me to be able to be more progressive with that. I would definitely, there are a couple of things I really, truly want to make sure that we do. Some of that is as we move away from going through a civil service board review of our job descriptions, it necessarily allows us to be more focused when we advertise positions, which means that somebody with talents around class and comp, as well as recruitment as part of a generalist experience, would further support what we would be doing. That's not to say that our recruitment administrator wouldn't be a very real part of that, but to be responsive in the city, to develop good recruitment tools, and then recruitment methods. So one of the advantages of the NeoGov system is that you can ask supplemental questions and really get from the candidate those things you need to know and understand about their talents, so that when you're evaluating people for consideration for interview, you know more about them, and that it makes that evaluation cycle more manageable. It's also way more robust on dealing with the recruitment stages that we have in public safety. So to hire a police officer, for example, there's a written exam, there's a background investigation, there's a pre-employment psychological exam, a pre-employment physical exam. There are so many different stages that you move people through. This is more robust in both keeping track of them, but also in communicating with them, with those people as they go through stages. And it gives us it can very quickly give us information that we need around looking at adverse impact as that's occurring. Those are tools that are difficult to have, not impossible, but difficult to have. And so I really see that we would benefit tremendously from being able to be ready with that, with more support and with more talent to do so.
Will it help fill some of the open positions in other departments?
It will.
Okay.
Absolutely. And also help with the challenges around recruitment. So in looking at some of our turnover, we have some positions that turn over pretty quickly and some that don't. We have a mix here. We have a very large, dedicated, loyal group of employees that stay with us up until the time they retire. But I think we're seeing some generational changes as well. And so part of if you can be more responsive and quicker in responsiveness and bring the talent for that sooner, I think that we can manage this better overall for the city.
Okay. I think I'm taking this question from someone else, but it came up yesterday. You may want to expand on it, Alderman O'Neill, as far as our evaluation or lack thereof. So I'll let you take over on that. Questions, you want to start on that then, or?
Do you mind?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I do have a question about employee evaluations, because I thought it was something that we had done. And it came to light in talking with an employee that said in their 10 years of working here, they'd never had one. Do we have an employee evaluation program?
We do. And I'm surprised to hear that somebody's never had an evaluation.
And
So we send from the Human Resources Office the list of performance reviews that are due to the departments.
Is it a standard template? Is it?
It is. The fire department has their own template because they spent years ago reconfiguring theirs, and so that's happened. I don't know that you can quote me on this yet, but I'm going to explore with NeoGov whether that was there's so many components, I'm not really sure. I know that part of what the HRIS system will do is we will move away from movement of paper for our transactions that have to do with employee changes and hires and all of that good stuff to an electronic format. And I believe they also have a performance management component that we just literally haven't looked that closely at yet. So,
okay. And are those performance reviews required by each department head?
under the code, a performance review is required for an individual to move through the pay scale. So that annual review is, we won't make a change in the Human Resources Office to somebody's step unless there's a performance review to go with that. It's because the code requires that it be satisfactory or above.
All right. And if an employee moves from like one department to another, do those follow them?
So under the code, it's an annual review. So if you transferred, you got promoted, you got demoted, your anniversary date is your anniversary date. You may have a position change in the interim before your anniversary rolls around, but if you say you went from equipment operator 1 to equipment operator 2, and then your annual review came up a month after you made that change, you would get your annual review after you make that change,
Okay.
because that's the way the code is written. That is not something we've proposed to change to.
Okay. I'll have to, maybe offline, we can talk about it because,
Yeah, I'm curious.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have that code reference, or you're saying in your code?
It's in Article 3,
Okay, okay,
Yep. under the civil service section.
okay, thank you.
I'll send it to you if you like.
Thank you. You're all set? Alderwoman Finlayson?
Thank
This is your
you.
specialty.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I'd like to first of all say, our HR department over the years has been diminished. It was a department like the other departments. And in a previous administration, it was seen fit to reduce it to an office, along with MIT, Harbor Master. There was one other, I can't recall. What was it?
DNAP.
DNAP, that's right, yes.
That was dissolved.
And shame on us for allowing that to happen. And I've said this annually, probably. Over the years in HR, as positions have changed and people have come and gone, we've not filled those vacancies. When you took over as director, you left a position, and I don't think that position has ever been filled.
It eventually got filled.
Eventually,
It took years, though.
exactly. So.
And we did the work.
And you did the work, and you continue to do the work
Yeah.
with what I consider a skeleton's crew. And so any opportunity to build up, most people don't realize what HR does. It's not just
We
hiring
don't really wear
people.
it in the
You
public
know,
arena.
there-
so.
You have a responsibility to all 600 plus of our employees and our contracts and all of that, contractors. And you have an extremely small staff to do that. The analyst position that's being added sounds to me like a generalist, and you may have used that term, who will have proficiencies in all of the categories that you cover. Not just the recruitment, but the benefits package, which is enormous in itself. And then there are the negotiated agreements, and it's
It's a list.
a lot. Yes, there is a list. So, I'm supporting totally increasing the size of the department. I would support creating a department as opposed to an office, because it merits that status because of the level of responsibility that you have. Now, that being said, I have some other questions. We are about to revamp salaries before the comp and class study is even completed. That seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. Did not the comp and class study deal with compensation also?
Yes. So as I said earlier, we were provided market data assessment back in January. And what is in the final phases here is the review of all the classification descriptions. The only really remaining impact in terms of compensation has more to do with making sure people are in appropriate grades. So you necessarily need the evaluation of the job description in order to do a final on that. But we have a great deal of it heavily in place, or at least provided to us for our use, and have been in constant. I meet weekly with the consultants, and of late, Jody can even attest to the fact that we've made sure that Jody has been a part of that as well, so that the elements of what we had greatest concern about, we're making sure that we've got our finger on it, and feel more confident about using parts instead of the whole. In an ideal world, all of it's done, all of it's completed. We're just assessing the entire body of work, making our decisions. But as life happens, and as ideals turn into some other experience. You do what you have, you deal with what you have, and you make your best calculated decisions on good information. And so what we've spent more time on is making sure that the information we have is good information from which to enter the bargaining world and present to you some suggestions for pay scales. And so it may look like it's pieced because it is, but it's not, because it's not exactly the iceberg where what's visible is, above the waterline. But honestly, there's a lot more of the body of work that we have very much accessible to us that we're using.
Well, I think I heard that they were still doing interviews, and maybe these were second and third interviews. So I wasn't sure exactly where the level was.
So I can speak to that as well. We made sure that we identified high priority positions, and sometimes with those, there's more back and forth, because that they're high priority positions. And so when you have 230 job descriptions to write, which is what it is, that is a lot. And so you are as a consultant, I can only appreciate that when they don't know an organization like we may know our organization, and they've got to get to know us through this, it's going to be important that they concentrate on those and spend the time doing so. And as far as I can tell, that's occurring.
And I feel like I should apologize because I had every interest in meeting them. And
Yeah.
because of my travel schedule, I wasn't
Right.
able to. But it sounds like they're moving forward in the direction in which we wanted them to do. Contract employees. You will recall several years ago when we had close to 200 contract employees. And we put things in place over a number of years to eliminate those contract employees and to make them civil service. These are people who had been with the city for 5 and 10 years and had not been given a civil service position. Where are we? Because I know there's still a few hanging out there of those contract employees that should be eliminated, but moved.
Yeah. I made sure that all the full-time employment agreements were also part of this study. And that doesn't mean that all of them will move to civil service or exempt service, depending on their circumstances this year, but there are ones we already committed to that we want to make sure have both external assessment from a market standpoint as well as an internal analysis for placement, titling, describing, and placing on a pay scale. So that is very much a part of the study.
Are the contract employees that you don't have any in your department, I would really like to see a list of those employees who are still contract employees. Like I said, we had close to 200, and we had, I'm sure, eliminated 2/3 of those, if not more.
It's considerably smaller. The other point of that I just want to make that we made changes, as you know, to Title III with regard to employment agreement. So that's the term of art now, employment agreement. And so we are definitely honoring the way that was constructed. The difference is we will not be able to eliminate employment agreements because grant-funded positions are not subject to, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you've created a civil service job and the grant goes away, and then what do you do? And so there's, that is an exemption, to that conversion. But that language we changed in October of 21, I think. Sorry,
And I
the
think when
COVID
our
years blur
committee
together.
met, and we did have a committee that met over several months, and we put those who were funded by grants into a separate category.
Yeah.
So we did recognize that.
Yeah, and the law does mirror that.
I have a concern about the increase in healthcare, which is, I believe, we were told it's 6%, 5%. we have had to give employees what we call a holiday, which really is not a holiday. Actually, we're giving them their money back because we, in essence, charged them more than we should have. We saw this happening and brought this to the attention many years ago when we continued to charge our employees the highest amount. And I know that we had, because I had many discussions with Mr. Uvala, who was our specialist in insurance
Insurance broker,
solutions.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's now the
this.
Hill Group, but it's the same people.
But he's retired, I realize.
Yes,
So
yeah.
we're still working with them, though?
We are, and Pam Nickerson, who worked very closely with him, is taking that role. And she's very talented.
Well, I'm sure he wouldn't have left it in anybody's
No, he
hands,
left-
So without. But anyway, all that to say, I don't want the employees to take less home. You know, we're moving them with this new scale if the, works through negotiated agreements. But oftentimes, we give them what may look like a pay raise, and then we take it away by way of their benefits. And that should not be, and especially when we have to turn around later on and give them a holiday. I would rather for them to keep the money in their pockets instead of our pockets. And so I would want you to focus on making sure that does not happen. If the employees accept this new pay scale, this new pay, whatever it's called, it should balance out. So we can't, like I say, I'm not going to repeat myself, but can't give them a benefit and then say, and by the way, your health care is going up, so now we got to take that money back.
So I think we shared that already, the highest level cost for the highest family coverage with the Plus plan. And that increase amounts to, am I remember this correctly, $345?
I just don't want us to, I don't like the habit of giving holidays when we could give the employees their money up front.
So I'm sure Jody would back me up on this. Jody's amazing at, we really drill down very, very carefully when we look at our experience information. You're actually making your determination for the next year on the past year. So it's better to be funded appropriately for your health fund and then say, okay, we're doing really well, let's give you a holiday, as opposed to be underfunded. Because one thing you can never control in life is your claims. And so all it takes is a significantly high claim, despite the way your plan is designed, and then you're overspending. And so we've been really fortunate in being able to hold down with the choices that we've made, the increase in costs that nationally other organizations have been experiencing consistently, and also being able to make sure we're making good forecasts around how much we need each year. So when it's a look back, to make a decision about a look forward, I do support that the way we go about that is more conservative in that regard. But then when you get to a place where we're forecasting there's no holiday in our future this year because of the claims and expenses of the plan. And that because it's a look back, then we need to look forward based on our experience for the year and make a decision for the coming year.
And I understand.
Yeah,
I understand. But when we have to give holidays for 3 years, then maybe we need to look a little more closely at how we're predicting. But I'll just leave that going on. Interns. We've had the same number of 20 interns for a number of years, and thank you. You've always been out there with me at the high school recruiting kids to come to the city to work. I would like to see those numbers increase, however. We've been doing 20 for 5 years or more, have we not?
Space problem.
yeah.
Well,
So I hear you,
space
and
should not be a problem.
yeah.
you know.
Well, yes, it shouldn't, but
Yeah.
it is.
But anyway, if they're spread around in all of our offices, then that would benefit everyone. FMLA. Did I understand you to say that we're creating our own FMLA process?
No.
Separate from the feds?
No, what I'm saying is the state introduced legislation that has been crafted and is expecting that there's going to be paid family medical leave at
I'm
the
sorry,
state
paid-
level. And similar, the best analogy I can make is like workers' compensation. There's a contribution rate that employers make towards future benefits paid under workers' compensation. It's part of the way to fund that plan at the state level. This is, I think, the state's desire to provide paid leave to all workers in the state, and to do so, organizations need to join the plan and make a contribution, a payroll contribution towards funding that. And so the way it's crafted right now is that it's starting that deduction and that contribution well ahead of when it was going to be expected to be implemented. So they were looking at a rate of 0.9% shared between the employee and the employer. That monies come into the state coffers, get set aside for the plan, and then that would start like 15 months prior to the first claim that could be filed against it. So
we would buy into,
we necessarily have to participate when it passes.
Okay.
It's been crafted, it's been delayed twice now, 2 legislatures. And but regardless, we've needed to be ready for that. And so to that end, I've attempted to read it and work with my government partners around this. The HR, it's a great topic of conversation among HR directors. And so one element is that you can have basically your own self-insurance plan with a third party, as long as you meet all the criteria, as long as you set aside same monies, all that stuff. And then you don't have to pre-fund the state's plan. It's complicated. And I think because it's complicated and because the state needs to administer it and needs to have staff and an office and all that good stuff to administer it, I think that's probably what's impacted the start of it. But we have to be ready, right? So we have to do our due diligence around that.
well, thank you for keeping up, and this would be a responsibility if we had a local lobbyist who could kind of follow that for us. So thank you for that. And lastly, I am proposing that we have a recognition for departments who provide the greatest, can't think of the term, service.
Contribution?
No, the service that we want to be able to provide to all of our employees.
Customer service.
Customer service, that's the word. Yeah, the greatest customer service, the friendliest department, our departments get recognitions from the commendations, they call them, from the community all the time, and we never know about them. And maybe if all of our departments would be thinking about that and going above and beyond and giving that extra level of customer service, I think we should do a recognition for them. That's just my thought.
Well, I could say, based on how we've been doing in executive leadership, we know we're all in it together. And I even got a text this morning, good luck, from another department head. It was really nicely received by me this morning. Good way to help settle some nerves. But we are in it together. We do interact with each other, and hopefully that we're demonstrating that support, and it's seen.
So you can text them back and tell them, I wasn't as bad as you thought I was going to be.
I don't think I was expecting you to be bad.
Thank you, Trish.
You're welcome.
Ms. Hart.
Colleagues, do you have questions? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Alderman Arnett.
25
First of all, Ms. Hopkins, I want to thank you not only for what you've been doing for the city, but for your candor. this morning regarding looking ahead and recognizing reality. Everybody doesn't do that.
Yeah.
That's really,
Everybody doesn't
That's
do
really
that.
well said, Ron.
And I know there have been times we didn't always agree, but that's not even the point. The point is that those are two robots who always agree. So, so with that being said, thank you so much for what you're doing and what you continue to do and what you will always do for our city. In many ways, HR goes unnoticed. Agree with Alderman Finlayson, this should be a department. I mean, I don't know why, but I haven't been here as long as she has, but this should be a department. And on a personal note, regarding your staff, yesterday I had to come to HR with my hair on fire.
Oh, I hope we
Because
put it out for you.
yesterday- What'd you say?
I hope we put it out
Oh,
for you.
yeah. Yesterday was tax day, and it was something that should have been handled, that I should have gotten an answer to way before yesterday. So I did come in there with my hair on fire yesterday, but I got an answer just like that. And not only that, I put my husband on the phone, and your employee spoke with my husband and got it all straightened out. So that, I felt so much better when I left there.
Well, I thank you for that, because we see that very much as our responsibility. If somebody, people have bad days, or they have things that they bring, and I think we have the discernment to recognize when somebody shows up agitated and in need versus somebody because of what's going on for them, as opposed to what our interaction should be with them. That I'm very, very proud of in terms of the skill sets of employees in our office, and that's that the invitation is there, like, what can I do to help you? Like, help you, let's take a breath, let's find out what's going on, let's find a way to get this resolved.
Well, thank you so much for that. I want to mention something about the interns. Definitely, we should grow the intern pool. Although last year, from what I could see being out on those pop-up tours, overwhelmingly, most of those interns were not Annapolis folk. And I know you have to pick the best people. And so I think we should maybe focus a little bit more, and I've talked to the mayor's office about that, as far as even maybe giving them a little more grooming, since I know one of the staff members is at Annapolis High at least once a week doing some work, and to kind of give them kind of a grooming as to what is expected in an intern. And I would suggest that maybe you and that staff member in the mayor's office kind of get together.
Okay.
And take a look at what you're really looking for when it comes to interview time and the nature of the work. And so it sounds like you'd be very amenable to that.
Oh, yeah. So we didn't do the interviewing on the front end. We gave them skills development after employment with us.
Okay.
So we spent 5 days, and shout out to Claudia Barber. We talked about it, and she did a great job, a wonderful job of putting together really good skills development, because we see it as we're not just having them come to the city of Annapolis to work, we're value adding, so that whatever they do with us or without us in their future, they benefited from this experience here, and they walk away with understanding how to do customer service, how to deal with conflict, just as an example, how to develop their resume, all of those elements that are really necessary, to be seen before you're seen. And I think that's definitely where our goals are.
They were great. I missed one of those pop-up tours, so I got to interact with them on a personal level.
Oh, good.
Last summer, so
Yeah.
they were wonderful. In fact, in January, when we had the mentor program with Anne Arundel County Public Schools up at Carver,
Yeah.
one of them was there, and he's at Morgan. And he's a student at Morgan. This is his first year. And so I got to talk to him about his experience last summer as well.
Yeah.
So it has been a great benefit. But yes, if whatever tidbits or whatever things you can let the staff member in the mayor's office know that what you as an HR professional can give to us, and let us know what we need to maybe groom our Annapolis High students to make sure that they're that there's no doubt that they're at the top of the list to be hired as interns, because eventually we want them to stay here and eventually, if possible, become city employees. And so that's the pipeline. I think that's a great pipeline for us to start with the internships. And I credit Alderman Gay for having the vision and the fortitude to pushing that along. And I think it has grown and it can continue to grow, because I think we really could benefit from, and I'll say this, from younger minds. And so they provide not only a service to the community, but I think they provide us with insights that, at least I'll speak for myself, that I had forgotten, being a little bit older than 40 or 20 or 15. But anyway, I think it's a great program, and we can make it even greater. And so thank you so much for that.
Thanks for your feedback.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Just a short time check, we just need to be respectful of the transportation department, so if we could just be mindful of that. Go ahead, Alderman Arnett.
Madam Chair, I'm going to stop going last. So several questions on your highlights, if I might. Just the human resource analyst is, I think it sounds like a good idea. It almost sounds like some succession planning, possibly. But is there a position description or some more description about the duties?
That's a new title, but it's very easily described, and that will be put together.
Okay, it'd be interesting to know. On the moving Associate 1 to Associate 2, you know what I'm going to say. Is this not a place for career ladders? And so we don't have to do it. And we have office associates across the city.
Yeah.
One would assume that they're doing relatively parallel levels of work, maybe not the specific of monitoring mower parts versus monitoring something else. But, I'm a fan of career ladders. I'm looking in the budget and I'm looking at the training. It's $9,500. Is that for HR, or that's not for the whole city, right?
It is for the whole city.
It is.
Yeah, we have a separate line item
Well,
for
I
our
know
training and
it's
education.
more than previous years, but I don't think we're talking about a lot of training. I mean, that's just,
Each department has training budget money.
I'm sorry?
Each department also has training.
That's what I was asking. So that's 9,500 for HR, not for.
So under supplies and other,
Right.
we have a training and education budget
For HR,
for HR.
right. So training.
And
I
the
think is-
proposed for FY '25 is
Yeah, no,
9,500.
and I'm
Yeah.
totally supportive of training,
Okay.
but.
Wait a minute, we have a puzzled look on Director Dickinson's face.
Yeah.
Where's
I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we realize that every department has its own training budget
Right,
for its
that's
own
what I was
employees.
trying to
Okay,
make sure.
yeah, I just want to make sure we got through there.
And we can go to OpenGov to the general budget and hit training and see the amount of total training, right? Okay.
Are you okay, Katie?
I agree with Alderwoman Finlayson, we need to keep track of where we are with the contract employees. I do agree with Alderwoman O'Neill. When we had the great reduction in staff back in 2009, 2010, Mayor Cohen was attempting to eliminate 33 positions. 12 of them could not be eliminated because they hadn't had a recent performance appraisal. So I have heard, and we've had some experience about whether people are getting an annual appraisal or not. That's obviously very important. It's a very important issue in terms of fairness to the employee. They need to know where they stand. Usually they stand at exceptional or outstanding, but if they're not doing well, that's even more important for them to get that appraisal. So I support that. The last thing is I'm looking at performance measures, and you know that's a big issue, and I know you are an important part of that, but I'm looking in the budget, and for your performance, your 4 goals, I'm not seeing a lot of measures. In fact, I'm seeing a lot of blank spaces. Is that because this is still a work in progress?
So in
next year?
the presentation, those are all
Well, in the
there.
presentation, I'm talking about in the actual budget, it is interesting that the presentation is somewhat cast differently. The goals are the same, but there's a lot of empty cells in the actual budget.
In the budget,
Right. So we have, for example, under the goal for ensure employees and retirees are satisfied, we have a benchmark and we have a measure for 22 and nothing for 24, but a proposed, and that's really it for measures. Even the performance measure thing, the benchmark is 30, but there's no information in there. And I would hope that HR of all places would really be on top of that and the leader. So I recognize that we are in a new process, and I'm working very hard with the assistant city manager, but I think this performance measure melded with the strategic plan and then employee appraisals is a very important thing in terms of our management. So I'll just note it.
Thank you.
But I've been noticing, and again, I'll make my pitch. Maybe we should be calling this performance outcomes rather than performance measures, because getting output measures doesn't really help us understand whether we're doing outcomes. We had a very interesting discussion with Public Works where they tell us the number of feet of sewer and water pipes they're replacing. That's an output. But really, what is the goal? Are we replacing all of our pipes by such and such a date? Or that's the real outcome, is are we have our pipes up to par? So I know I'm preaching to the choir in large measure, but I do want to say it.
Well, as the soft science side of things, you know, for us in HR, it is more about outcomes, honestly.
Our
Those are
assistant city manager
qualitative.
says it well. She says, what story do we want it to tell?
Yeah,
That's-
right,
yeah,
exactly.
Right?
I think I said something to make Katie mad.
I know, Ms. Connolly.
Yeah, I just wanted to, sorry, Katie Conley, Budget Manager, just want to clarify for the record. In each department, you'll see training costs, but also within HR, there's other professional services that has training costs for citywide initiatives as well. Okay.
But in terms of the whole budget, $9,500. I mean, I know how fast from my days of providing training for staff, that money can disappear. And I also think that training, aside from the actual information and upgrading, training is a morale booster. When you give employees training, you say, I care enough about you
Yeah.
and your future to give you this step up. So I just think it's extremely important.
Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning career ladders. I just want a shout out to Alderman Gay and yourself as well for assisting the Department of DPW in advancing, you know, their careers. That was really a real big issue for Alderman Gay, so thank you for that. So, well, thank you. I think Alderwoman Pendle Charles said it well. I mean, I can see the care in your eyes and your empathy. You're just such the right person in the right job. And again, thank you. We do have a tradition here with gifts for you. If you want to bring
that's
something
okay.
back for your deputy or not, but. And again, if you could answer Alderman
I will.
Savage's questions,
And is it intended, just a point of,
go ahead, what?
is it intended to answer it on the spreadsheet, or?
What's that? Oh, yeah, no, just send them to me and we'll get them
Okay.
on a spreadsheet.
Thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying that.
Whatever way you want to do,
Okay,
whatever's easiest. And
all right. I can do that.
again, thank you. Yeah, and take a granola bar. This one might have landed and stuff, So, 5-minute break for my colleagues, just, yeah. Yeah. Just 5 minutes, so we'll, thanks for your patience, and we'll a minute, let me get my glasses. Okay. Thank you for your patience. We're going to start up with the Department of Transportation. One thing I just want to say in looking at this budget is I just want to save time in talking about addressing and prioritizing, actually, it's sort of the elephant in the room, the reduction in the state and or federal grants, as I understand it, and emphasize, the path to recovery so that our goal is to have a sustainable transportation department. I think we need to allow time to talk about that because it is quite significant for the public to be aware that we do not have this grant funding. It clearly shows in the respective line item as far as a deduction in revenue, therefore relying more on the parking fund, and then how we're going to optimize the parking fund to address that. So just want to make sure we allow time for that. So with that, if you can introduce yourself, who's at the table, who's in the audience,
Sure.
et cetera.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair, Finance Committee members, and all the persons. I'm Marcus Moore, Director of Transportation and Parking. And with me here today is our Bernice Snyder, our Accounting Associate, and Kwaku Dua, our Deputy Director of Transportation. And representing SP Plus, we have Senior Manager, Mr. John Kemp, who's in the audience here. So thank you guys for the opportunity to share with you our mission, an overview of our agency and the positions along with personnel that make up Annapolis Transit and Parking. Additionally, we want to share with you our accomplishments for FY24, our goals and accompanying objectives and performance measures for FY25, some of our long-term goals, and our FY budget requests. So with that starting, our mission statement for the Department of Transportation is to provide the highest level of reliable, safe, interconnected, customer-focused, affordable, accessible, efficient public transportation throughout the Annapolis area, and to enhance the quality of life, support the environment, and economic development. Parking services aim to deliver customer-focused, equitable, and high-quality parking solutions by enforcing the city regulations and maintaining on-street parking in our garages. Slide 4. So our team, the transportation team, is made up of the director, deputy director, accounting associates 1 and 2, transportation coordinator, and we'll talk more later about the pedestrian coordinator. Our vehicle operations is our transportation superintendent, vehicle operations and operations of the buses. We have our transportation superintendent. We have 3 full-time supervisors, operations supervisors, 2 part-time supervisors, vehicle maintenance operator supervisor. We're funded for 29 full-time drivers, and this is the first time since I've been here we actually have 28 right now. We had 29 yesterday. And we're budgeted for, it's very floating, it's very dynamic right now. The part-time positions, drivers, are a subject of what's in the budget. So 28 hours a week budgeted. Right now we have 10. And if everybody did 28 hours, I think we can come out with about 16 or so. And obviously they fill in part-time when someone's out, for, paid time off, vacation, sick, bereavement, or the case may be. In our maintenance shop, we do about 90+% of our own maintenance in-house, led by a supervisor. We have 2 full-time technicians, and 1 is actually a specialist, and 1 part-time technician who gives us about 8 or 9 hours a week. And he's actually a full-time tech at WMATA, so he's very well qualified. In our parking department, we have SP as our partner, and of course within the concession area is managed by Premium Parking, and we'll soon to have a parking program manager that will fall into that area. We'll discuss a little more. So our functional areas, as you can see here, are our bus service, our planning, transportation planning, and parking management. Next. Highlights for FY24, we've hired a parking coordinator as of yesterday. We'll be starting with us in a couple weeks. we'll talk more, well, I guess I can talk a little bit more about it right now, but House Bill 950 is funding for LOTS, and we're one of the 23 in the state of Maryland, and LOTS is an acronym for Locally Operated Transit Systems. And I know under Governor Moore's budget, there's be a 40% cut in that kind of funding, and with the passing of HB 950, the funding levels will stay the same as they are now, as they would have gone down in FY '25 and beyond. We have procured 6 small cutaway buses to be used in microtransit. That'll be coming later in the fiscal year, but later this calendar year. And we assisted some of the things that we do with Parks and Recs and our OEM with the transport of people from Lighthouse Shelter to Pitt Moyer. We do a lot of those kind of things throughout the year that we just don't seem to take credit for when we're helping out, but that's part of what we do as a team. Some of the accomplishments that we had in the transit operations side, as you see, the grants that we were awarded in FY '24, a little over $2.6 million for operating. The capital side, about $1.3 million, which included the 2 electric buses, which we hope to have by October, maybe September, and working on the infrastructure for charging at our facility. The safe transport of vehicle operations, we had no reportable accidents or incidents in FY '24, and there is a threshold that meets the FTA that says if it's a reportable incident that we have to disclose. Although everything that we have, no matter how minor, is always talked about with our risk management, and we do detailed follow-up to see what we can do to prevent reoccurrence. FY '24 also, we saw over 300,000 passenger trips, which is about 49% increase over FY '23, and in hours, that's about a 7% increase. We're in compliance, which we have been over several years, of submitting all of our requirements to the FTA and, of course, MTA through MDOT on time. We've updated with the help of our human resources, our Title VI plan and our Equal Opportunity Plan. For our partners, is that 8? 8, yes, 8. 8. Okay. If you could go follow me with number 8 is our FY accomplishments with SP Plus. 100% daily enforcement in residential parking districts. Make sure the uptime for meters is greater than 99%, or it was greater than 99%. Management will respond to all valid customer complaints within 1 business day. And the collection rate of fines issued over about 76%. And reason why that's not 100% because sometimes they'll go to adjudication or they're found to be, they've been waived for whatever reason.
I'm breaking my rule, waiting for questions, but what does uptime mean?
Working. Uptime is working.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yep, sorry. So it's a word we made up. It'll be in Webster next year. This is FY '25 goals for transportation. We have 4. Improve the reliability, convenience, and customer service of our transit service. The overall operational safety and security of not just our facility, but onboard our buses and for our passengers traveling. Continue to be compliant with all applicable FTA, Federal Transit Administration, and MTA, Maryland Transit Administration requirements, and improve the bus business practices. So we'll talk to you a little bit about how that happens. With goal 1, the reliability, convenience, and customer service of the transit operation. So the objective is to improve the transit reliability. And if you look at benchmarks, how do we measure that? And that's to maintain a 94% on-time performance of fixed route, where our mobility or ADA service maintains 100%. There have been a few days I've seen it go down to a low of 98, but generally speaking, we've been at 100%, 99% of the time for mobility. The performance measures is the main performance measures, the percentage of on-time performance of the transit fixed route services, as we mentioned. The other objective here is to improve customer satisfaction. So how do we measure that? Or the benchmark would be no more than 10 valid customer complaints per 100,000 trips, expressed as a percentage of 0.01, and the number of valid complaints per 100,000 trips as a percentage. The third objective here is to implement a pilot feeder connection service, which we're calling on-demand or microtransit, and to do this to improve the ridership experience by connecting the underserved transit-dependent neighborhoods with core services. And to do that, the measurement will be to successfully implement this microtransit feeder service, which we are working on now. Goal number 2 is improve the operational safety and security. So to reduce FTA reportable accidents, as we discussed earlier, that we've been maintaining a very high percentage of that being 0, I should say. The accident rate, as you can see, as far as the benchmark and what that means as far as 100,000 miles of bus travel in a year. So maintaining the safe and reliable transit fleet that's wheelchair accessible. Again, that word, Alderman Tierney, you like uptime, 100% of working wheelchair lifts and ramps on all buses. How do we do that? By the drivers doing a pre-trip inspection, and they also do a post-trip when they come in, but also the inspections that are being done when we have a A, B, or C preventive maintenance of our in-house of all the other components, but wheelchair lifts and ramps are also a part of that. To improve the transit security, 100% of our functioning vehicle surveillance system on all of our buses, and maintain the surveillance cameras to make sure that they are working. In the last few years, that has been very beneficial to the city, helping our law department go through what claims that we may have that proved what we've done properly to mitigate any financial responsibility or claims or lawsuits to the city. Compliance with all applicable FTA through the MDOT, Maryland Department of Transportation requirements. So to comply with the quarterly reporting, all of the benchmarks are 100% compliance for all objectives. But for number 1, the reporting, the on-time preparation, submission of compliance reports as requested for reimbursement. We do quarterly reimbursements for services that we provide, which is maintenance of our buses or billing of our drivers. Dr. Dua can speak a little bit more of that once we send in. It's always front-end loaded, so we get reimbursed. And so that's why sometimes it looks like, we may not have any money in that account to do that, but we have to submit a bill to the MTA to get reimbursed for the services we provide. The National Transit Database is something that's used for transit agency, I think with 50 buses or more in the country, Kwaku, or more than 25 buses in the country. NTD reporting, it's around the country, but depending on the size, who has to do this? 30 buses or more, or less, or more, for smaller ones. So making sure that we submit this, we have done over the last several years, been compliant with that. Our drug and alcohol program requirements, we want to make sure that we do random testing is done through the service hours. And what that means is even though the city's open between 8:30 and 4:30, our service is out there between 5:30 a.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. Monday through Friday. We can't just do testing 9 to 5. So we work with our third-party White Glove, and we'll make arrangements when they're after hours. Of course, they're always available to do post-accident testing. But we look at the spread. MTA comes out, or through the MDOT comes out to look at our reports to make sure that there is a spread through the service that we provide, and we've been compliant.
Did you just say the word white glove?
White Glove is a drug and alcohol testing company in Maryland, and they actually do for many different agencies, mainly transit, to do pre-employment drug screening testing, and they'll do post-accident or any kind of random testing that we so desire. That's set up through our human resources. So we send them out, and we as a city get a bill through HR, but it's called White Glove Drug and Alcohol Testing. The one we use is in Severna Park, but there's like 6 locations throughout Maryland.
Thank you.
They're one of several. Concentra does it as well. And goal number 4, to improve the transit business practices. So we want to look at the fare box ratio, and the system-wide average is about 15%. And that's very dynamic because obviously if you fare free, your recovery is 0. Many agencies are in the single digits or low teens. Not many are above 30%. And what we want to do is maintain that consistency of about 15%. But if you look through your budget book, you'll see that we're just below 11. Installing solar panels on bus shelters will increase our advertising revenue. And our partner is Vector Media, and right now we get 55% of the revenues from the bus shelters. And that was one of our enhancements from last year to get, and we have the RFP in procurement now. I talked to our regional manager, that will increase by 5%. So ads can be seen at night. So being able to get 60% of our revenue for a non-fare is a great thing. Some of the things we want to look at is how do we increase the monies coming in, not just through fares or other grants that we always counted on. Strengthening our financial health of the transit system to achieve the average operating cost of $90 per hour, which is consistent with MTA requirements. Basically, that's fully loaded when you discount city overhead or administrative cost. The goal is between 70 and 90%. I think we're clocking right around 90.5, 91%. So we're pretty close there. And, obviously operating within our budget adherence is part of that goal. Long-term goal, FY25 to 28, develop a blueprint for a hybrid system consisting of the fixed route and on-demand microtransit services. We're on the way doing that now. The bus stop amenities and accessibility, making sure all of our bus stops are ADA compliant. We talked about the bus stop lighting as far as safety. When you look at a lot of the zero emission stuff that's going on throughout the state and the country, we're right in tune with some of that. Dr. Dua has done a white paper about our zero emission vehicle plan. We'd love to share that with you, maybe with the Transportation Committee sometime soon. FY24 performance measures for transit. What performance measures were most successfully completed or ongoing? We're into our fourth quarter of FY24. But fixed route on-time performance, making sure it remains consistent as it is now. We're clocking about 94%. Some months we've actually had as high as 96, 97. And what we do is take a sample set of fixed routes that are out there. The operations supervisor, under the direction of the superintendent, will get, sometimes 80 or 90 sample sets, which we could get a lot more. We have more people here. We can probably get a little more, up to 150 or more, to give that sample set. We talked about the service delivery and the MTA, FTA requirements and all the things that we're required to do by state and federal government. Our preventive maintenance plan, we have a very comprehensive plan that's being followed by our maintenance personnel that we are always sharing with MTA every quarter. We have a meeting during COVID. It was virtual. They've just started coming back to kind of look around our facility and see what we're actually doing, and they're pretty pleased, and we've kind of been a poster child the last couple of years for the other agencies within the state of what to do. With our parking partners, SP Plus, their goals for this coming year, ensure that on-street parking regulations are enforced equitably and consistently, and support the economic viability by balancing competing demands for limited parking spaces. Convert the on-street parking facilities to the new acronym of PARCS, which is Parking Access Revenue Control System. We'll be able to talk first with the Transportation Committee next month. As we go online, we're going gateless in Park Place first. 17. Ensure that on-street parking regulations are enforced. This is one of the goals, first goal for the parking contractors, to enforce or effectively enforce on-street parking regulations equitably and consistently. And the benchmark to do that is 100% of the residential parking districts are covered throughout. And of course, there's times where there's hot spots. We may spend a little bit more time in one area because of things that may have come up. And the performance measures is the percentage of residential parking districts areas that are covered by daily enforcement. It's always pretty tricky to make sure for SP Plus that had the whole city, they probably had a few more people to cover the other 2/3 non-concession area of the city in balancing the demands of all of us of wanting to make sure parking meters are up and running 95% of the time, and that they're able to be in the garages to offer the assistance as needed for customers coming in. And in case the public needs to know, SP Plus is our management company that's taking care of the GOTS Garage, Knighton Garage, and Park Place. Goal number 2, support economic viability by balancing competing demands for limited parking spaces To ensure on-time resolution to customer complaints, the benchmark to do this is to respond to all valid customer complaints within 2 business days as a percentage of all the complaints. And management will respond to them within 2 days as a percentage, and they've been pretty successful at maintaining that objective. Improve collection and clearance rates of issued parking violations, making sure that at least 70% of the violations are actually collected. And that's just kind of making sure meters are up, garages are working as intended as far as the exit with the old system that we have right now. Goal number 3 is to convert off-street parking facilities with the new park system. So replace the outdated equipment at the 3 garages I mentioned, Park Place, Scotts, and Knighton. The equipment is starting to be replaced now, as I mentioned, with Park Place being first, going online sometime in mid-May maybe. And then I think the next one will be Scotts and Knighton. Ensure that the work is performed on schedule and within budget. And from all indications I've seen so far, that is actually happening. FY25 performance measures continue for parking. Performance measures most successfully completed, targeted, achieved, or exceeded the percentage of residential parking district area that was covered by the enforcement areas as they intended to do. And the meters are in compliance and working order 98% of the time, and that management is able to respond to these requests that come in, and they get quite a few through email and actual calling or seeing their POs, parking enforcement officer or ambassador that are actually on the street. So their long-term goals going to FY25 to 28, increase the parking options by implementing a multi-app, so it's not just Park Mobile, and we can talk more about those other options that come through and the things that are being proposed with Park Place. They will still have a kiosk, but they will have Park Mobile and some other options there, as well as people to make sure everything goes smoothly with increased signage. Continue to improve paid parking programs and explore options for areas within the city where there is a win-win opportunity for users of the city. For example, what we have as far as the 9-hour parking on St. John's, we have the Park Shop and Dime and other programs that can be used for visitors, employers of local businesses, residents coming down for visits or whatever, or their guests. So we can explore that a little bit more. What we look for your help with, the 3 requests that we have, to talk a little more about what Gorilla Posts are, but office furniture, we've shared some pictures with the Finance Committee, Finance Department of what a lot of our furniture there looks like it's been, through the 1970s, this old metal desk that have it was worn out. Automatic external defibrillators, AEDs, they're approximately $1,800 to $2,000 each. We don't have one at our department. It would be really nice if we can put one on each of our buses. And when I was talking to Captain Edwards from the fire department, he did some training with our employees, our frontline operations, about a year ago, and did some retraining on first responder stuff. And if we put one on the bus, they actually have a GPS that they can see where the closest one is within the city, whether it's here at City Hall, Parks and Recs, Pip Moyer, or whatever. Wouldn't it be neat if they could see that that bus going down West Street actually has one, they can grab it off to save a life. So it's not just for, the limited of those people that are on the bus, it's for the actual city as a whole, visitors alike, but it's a mobile AED. Granted, that comes with more insurance to make sure that they're working, they're checked out once a month. The fire department can help us out with that. But I think that's really a cost to make sure that we remain safe. And if that's something we want to look into doing little by little, but first off and foremost, we definitely would want to get something at our location.
Director Moore, are those enhancements in the budget, or is that above and beyond the budget?
That is in our budget,
Okay.
and what I'm, we've actually requested all 3, and I want to think more about the Gorilla Posts because they are, for use of the city, but through our contractors, and we can talk a little bit more about it. This is an innovative program or product that's used around the country that can be reused. And what we do now, like there's a delegation coming here or whatever visiting, we put it on a cone and we put a stick in it and say reserve parking. Very easy for a 3-year-old to pick it up, throw it to the side, or move out the way, or I never saw it. With these little posts or pucks that are part of the ground, there's a special tool that makes sure it stays there, and it's not a tripping hazard. It's no bigger than the little manhole cover that might be 3 inches in diameter. And they can be used for that purpose in certain colors that we can get that make sure they meet the HPC requirements of downtown. Once they're there, they just take the post away when it's no longer needed, but they can move them about for other areas. The post itself, the puck will actually stay there to be a part of it. But we can talk a little bit more along the way, and if Mr. Kim would like to say a little bit about how the system works, but they're very efficient. It's the wave of the future. I did have some pictures when we talked to finance about it, but it does help optimize parking space allocations without the old antiquated sticking a stick in the ground that can easily be removed. Okay. Kwaku will take us through a little bit of what we have here on our budget and expenses. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Kwaku Ajimandua, Deputy Director, Transportation Department. Can you hear me? Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our budget for FY 2025. You can see that there is some reduction compared to the current fiscal year. It's about 14.67% reduction compared to FY 2024. And the main reason is that in our grant application, we did not ask for money for bus replacement. So typically when we do ask for bus replacement, the cost is reflected in our current budget. So that is why we do have that kind of reduction. The next slide, please. This is the grant budget, and that is what I would like to spend a little bit of time, and also I think the chair person also did mention that. Okay, if you go back in history in recent years, we have received a lot of federal funding through congressional acts. We think of the CARE funds, which brought in a little bit over $4 million. We think of CRISA, another acronym. We have ARPA, which also brought in close to $4 million for both operating and capital. One time also we did receive additional state funding for operation. All these funds have been used up. So on top of that, we were informed by the state that because of the state proposed budget, we should expect a decrease of up to 40% in our large urban operating grant. For instance, in FY 2024, that was about just over 770,000. When we did calculate 40% reduction, that came to like $500 plus $1,000. So with all this, we do see a significant decrease in the grant revenues that we have been receiving in the past compared to FY 2025. So that is where the issue is right now, because we do not have any additional infusion of grants from the FTA through the state. So that's why we see this particular reduction. Talking about the capital outlay, remember what I said earlier about the first slide, the reduction in the FY 2025 proposed budget. You will see that the capital outlay for FY 2025 is 0. And therefore, that cost is not reflected in our overall budget. So that is why it explains the reduction in the total budget as proposed for FY 2025.
What was that? What was the 80?
Our capital outlay will be the money that we will be asking for bus replacement. Now the buses are around $400,000-$500,000. So, for instance, if you are asking for replacement of 2 buses that have reached the end of their useful life, that cost will be reflected in our budget.
So no more then?
Now, so for FY 2025, we are not asking because our buses are relatively new. We do have even grant for FY 24 to replace the last 2 buses that have reached the end of their useful life. So for FY 2025, we are not asking the state for any grants for replacement of our older buses because the buses currently that we have are relatively new. Okay. Any question on that before we go to the next one? Okay.
I know, I hate to ask questions as we go, but they're
Okay, so
very specific to the slide. What is the reduction? Thank you for balancing your budget in light of this reduction, number one. It looks like you made an effort in reducing your operational expenses, et cetera. But what is the deduction in salaries and benefits? That's pretty significant from F24 to 25 in expenses.
So let me take a
Salaries,
look at it.
Director Dickinson has her hand up.
Well, with the decrease in the revenue coming in, we have to decrease the amount of expenses that we're going to pay with the grants.
Yeah.
So as you see that the revenue is equal to the expenses, and once they say, here's what we expect to get in grant funds,
Yeah.
then we can only fit in expenses
Right.
that match that.
Right.
The rest of the salaries then, from 24, remain in the administrative or the operations division and the maintenance division, and we have to pay them there.
Okay.
So we only show here expenses enough to match the grant revenue
Okay, so it's the
expected.
grant match. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got it.
so these are the grant-funded expenditures in this particular table.
Grant-funded expenditures. Thank you.
All right.
Got it.
Next slide. The next slide is our proposed parking budget. We did work with our parking contractor. We did submit some proposals. The department and finance both reviewed the proposals and came out with this proposed budget for our parking contractor. This excludes, correct me if I'm wrong, excludes the concession area parking. This is purely for the Girls and Nighting on-street parking as managed by SP Plus. Okay.
Is it apples to apples then with fiscal year 2024? Or,
So, no.
right.
When I was doing my presentation, I had a little bit of a slide on that, because in '24, some of the trust accounts that were funded when we did the P3 deal, and then later when we refinanced some of the sub-debt, we received the remnants of what was in that trust reserve. And so in '24, we saw larger incoming revenue sources from those, and we will not see that again. So the revenues that you see in '24 is higher than what it will be in any other year.
Okay. Next slide.
Never?
That's the last one. Oh, okay, that's the end.
Maybe hopefully someday it'll get up there.
So, SPS, 3, 4, and 5. Essentially, I just wanted to
Do any of my colleagues want to walk through the budget, or are you okay on the adds and deducts? Yeah, I think it would be very helpful, if you don't mind, Director Dickinson. I know you did this with a slide, but could you walk us through, well, if you just walk us through the subsections of the budget, 106 and 107. Yeah, just, it starts on 105, and just walk us through what each fund subsection
Okay.
does, I guess is the word.
So these you're referring to the tables that are in your budget book. So the
Yeah.
first table
Yep.
is the entire fund, and it's, shows you the revenue side of the total. That's putting all of their divisions together, total revenues.
Okay.
And when you look at the next page, at the top, that's the entire transportation fund expenses. Like a consolidated expense summary.
Okay. wait a minute, wait.
105 of your operating budget book.
But if we were to just focus on the first one, the revenues coming in, and the second line item, you can clearly see the grant reduction. Okay, and then, do you want to talk about the intergovernmental line item now, or does that come up in a later table?
Do I want to talk about it?
Yeah, where else do you?
So you're saying you see a decline there?
Correct, in intergovernmental.
I'm trying to remember what's in this line item. It would probably be helpful to, So when we apply ARPA to their budget, we put it in this intergovernmental line and not in their grants line.
Okay.
So I believe in,
Is that the rest of ARPA for fiscal year 2025 then? 2.3 million?
so what's in it for 2025? That's the amount that we intend to give them from our ARPA next year, correct? So not just our ARPA, that's most of it.
Okay,
We have a couple of smaller grants that we get
okay,
from state and county sources that are in that number, but they're a very small piece of that. Most of that is the ARPA that we intend to give to the transportation fund next
I
year.
think those are shown in detail somewhere else in the budget book, but I don't
So,
go off track.
so I don't know about within the budget book, but I know if you go to OpenGov and you click on those lines, you get the detail of what's
Yeah,
in there,
that's-
which I don't have. My problem right now is I don't have it in front of me, so.
I'm in OpenGov, I still can't read.
Yeah.
This really looks like a bus route.
Well, that's why I want to walk it through. That's why I think I want to walk it through and understand it. Okay, so that's an infusion of ARPA and other, but what is the other revenue next line item? And I know it's probably in,
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing what you're saying. What are
the
you
next
asking?
line item is other revenues, which is a substantial increase.
So Katie's now in a position to drill down and tell you what the comparative revenue line items are in there.
Yeah. And I'm only asking because we're talking millions, you know, differences of $1 million or so.
So Katie Conley, Budget Manager, I will ask since I just walked back in, if you could repeat the question so I
Okay,
can.
we're walking through the table so we understand them, especially the relationship between parking and transportation, et cetera. So we're on, we're on the first table. We went over intergovernmental
Total transportation revenues.
transportation fund revenues, and then the next line item just says other revenues, and it's an increase of approximately 1.2 million from 2024 projection.
Yes, so within the two revenue sources within that category is transfer from the general fund and then transfer from the off-street parking.
So that's where
Because-
the infusion from parking comes in, for lack of a
Correct.
word.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So it
And
goes
that is
from parking to
2.6
general fund to
program for 25.
transportation. Okay. Are you all with me?
That shows an infusion in parking.
It shows an infusion from parking
Right, but
to
I
the
thought
general
our
fund, and
parking
then,
revenues were going down because it's reduced by the amount that is going to pay for the 3P. I'm really trying to figure out where this money is coming from.
So every year, since I've been here, the parking fund has subsidized the transportation fund activities.
yep,
And what the number that Katie just provided was the amount that's coming from parking to transportation.
In other revenues?
Yes, it's a part of that other revenue line.
Parking only, or is it parking in ARPA?
Well, I believe there might be a smaller, okay, so most of it, 2.6 is the regular transfer from parking fund. And there's 100,000 for something, a special, right?
A little bit less for 25, it's 47.4 from the general fund. So that is anything that we funded using one-time funds out of the general fund to pay for through the transportation fund.
oh, okay.
But the big increase that you're seeing in 25 is the it went from 1.4 million from the parking fund to 2.6 million
Okay,
in '25.
Okay, and the 100,000 something else, okay. All right, here's my concern or question. In intergovernmental, again, we're talking revenue, you're saying that that 2.3 million is ARPA, but then it's going to be gone, right, next year?
So the breakdown of that 2.3 million in '25 is 1.9 ARPA, and then we also have the county grant of $350,000 that's been has continued since, I believe it, since I've been here. Yeah.
We may get the county next year. I mean, I'm just looking ahead at what our exposure is. The ARPA money will or will not be gone.
It will be gone.
Okay,
It will be gone
that's quite alarming.
in 26,
Yeah, so we need to
1.9
find
million.
$1.9 million of revenue infusion from somewhere.
At the very least, right? I mean, you're
Yeah.
considering inflation next year, so
Yeah,
it might be
so
closer to two, above two.
$2 million gap looking ahead. Okay, all right, let's keep that thought, let's move on. Not funny, but, okay,
Okay.
so then we're into expenses, and I see that, that's where you show your capital outlay reduction. So no buses in 2025 are planned, or no purchasing of any substantial vehicles. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. 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 So then explain to me what the interfund, or all of us, what the interfund transfer in there is as an expense.
So that's probably a question for us.
Yes.
That's what we consider admin charges, right? So the cost of all the enterprise funds to do business through the general fund is the best way I can explain it. Do you want to add?
Yes, so it is indirect costs that are charged to the enterprise funds to compensate the general fund for the services given, both from an administrative standpoint, a management standpoint. We have a spreadsheet that allocates those administrative indirect costs to the enterprise funds.
Do we do that in all respective departments
Yes.
that are affected?
So
Okay.
we do all enterprise funds because enterprise funds are supported by user fees. So those users, utility users, et cetera, should be paying a portion of the overhead that the general fund incurs on their behalf.
So because enterprise funds are self-sufficient,
They're supposed to be,
they're
yes.
supposed to be, this money is offset somewhere else, right?
Yes, yes. You see it as a revenue source in the general fund. Those administrative reimbursements coming back in
Okay.
from the enterprise funds are a revenue source in the general fund.
Okay, okay, okay. And then the next one is the Transportation Fund Administration Budget Summary, which has a substantial increase in salaries and benefits.
I think that's your pedestrian coordinator.
Oh, that's the parking coordinator.
No, the pedestrian coordinator, we've moved a position into transportation for a pedestrian coordinator, and that's one of the things that the director was going to go into detail about.
Oh, I thought we only added, it doesn't show on page 105 as a body, the term that we're using.
So it's in the, if you look in the administration division, in that position
Oh, yeah,
table.
there it is, okay.
Yeah, the pedestrian coordinator is shown there.
Oh, okay, and then the parking is in the parking, okay. All right,
So is this the same as before, where it's to be determined, but they
yeah.
have an
we-
estimation?
Yeah, are we addressing that as we did before, where we have a position and we don't know what we don't know? We're waiting for the comp study, but you have a line item addressing that as a contingency. We have a guess of what that salary is going to be in the budget.
About 200,000,
Okay,
right?
or wherever that,
Between 9.
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
Michael Malinoff, City Manager. The position still has to be reviewed by the Class and Compensation Study. It wasn't originally incorporated in that review, but the Director, Mayor's Office, and the Director of HR are going to get together with them and have that reviewed. So no, we don't know what the final salary of that is
But we
yet.
have a guesstimate.
Well, there's an existing pin
Yeah.
that's being moved from the mayor's office that's at a certain salary.
Okay.
And it'll be reviewed for the new position in the context of its responsibilities in the existing department. So we think it will be at least met by the current salary, but we're not sure what the final outcome will be until it's reviewed objectively.
Okay. And that, again, that guesstimate is in dollar-wise is in Jody's
Well, it's
nodding
just
her head.
based on what the current position in the mayor's office pays. We don't know where the class and compensation study will go, but we
Right,
don't think it'll be more.
yeah, okay, all right. Okay, thank you for your indulgence here. Okay, so then that takes care of, I think that takes care of that. Okay, so then next box is the operations summary of transportation fund, where you don't really see, because it's operations, you don't see any impact of the grant here, I don't think. But your expenses, how did they go up $500,000? Your expenses did go up? Oh, what's in that? Why the increase in that one?
Well, part of the increases in the salary and benefits is going to be your normal annual increases, but remember, there's less grant revenue coming from the state, so the salary costs that we might have moved over to the grants division are now back here.
Okay, that's where they are. Okay. So I guess the question is does this have any impact to your current staffing? Doesn't seem like it does, right? Transportation staffing is staying the
From a
same.
budget standpoint, yes.
Okay,
For this year.
for now.
Yeah, except for the one position we just spoke about, it's fairly stable from a staffing standpoint.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So then we go into the. few
Madam
more-
Chair?
Yes.
If I may add a comment to that particular sheet where it talks about the operations budget, the increase is also due to the fact that we do have a grants reduction. In the past, remember the grant budget, which shows grant-funded expenditures. If the grants revenue are higher, then some of these expenditures will be moved to the grants budget. But because the grant revenues are lower, the grant-funded expenses are lower, and therefore those expenses that should have been funded by grants are reflected
now.
here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're trying to match it up
Yeah.
now with what you have left.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Okay, so then we go to maintenance. That's steady. Thank you for, I guess there you're trying to attempt some reduction in contractual services. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. And then we go to the bad news. Again, this is the grant budget, aligning this transportation fund grant budget summary is really addressing the grant reduction, I think. Right? It's grant funded stuff. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, do we have any questions about any of those line items, other than the revenue not coming in? I don't think so. Again, it just shows your reduction in capital outlay to marry up with the reduction in the grant, okay? Okay, and then we have the Whopper next one, which is your infusion of, I think would be the parking, right? That's where the interfund transfer of $1,288,000.
So this is an expense table.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it's an expense table.
Wait a minute.
And tell us what's in that big 1,288,000, the
Oh, it
components.
doesn't say that. It usually says expenses, okay.
That's primarily the admin charges that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that $1,046,000.
Indirect costs.
Wait a minute, I'm confused. Okay, so, okay, so that is an expense table, transportation fund, other budget summary is an expense table?
Yes, there's an others division that incorporates some other expenses that don't go in administration or operations or their maintenance division.
Okay, so then I really don't understand what that interfund transfer is in that box.
Well, so when we were at, remember a few minutes ago, we talked about the administrative charges that we're paying to the general fund.
Yes.
When we talked about that, you were looking at the total combined transportation budget expenses.
Yes,
It's in there. It's also in this division. This division is where those expenses reside from a division standpoint. We're now looking at the breakout tables.
so I'm going back up to.
It's the
table-
same thing we talked about before. Most of it is the transfer to the general fund for the administrative charges.
So am I going back to the previous table of transportation fund expenses?
No, what I'm saying is that first table that we talked about
The very first
is
one?
everything combined and folded in together. It's the consolidated transportation fund. Now we're going through each individual division,
Right,
and this division, other, is where you see that administrative transfer.
okay, but again, we're talking expenses, right?
Correct.
Okay, so then again, I'm trying to marry it up with the summary tables, for lack of a better word. And
May-
so that's why I was going back to
Okay.
the second table, which is
Okay.
transportation fund
So you can add the numbers
expenses.
together. So
Expenses
we'll,
versus expenses.
so what we're going to do right now is take you from what you're seeing in the others to what you see up in that summary table.
So if I may, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
You're looking at the budget book?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Not open.gov, no.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We'll walk you through. All right.
Thanks,
Top of page 106,
yes,
that expense graph or chart.
yes,
That is all expenses. So that includes, as you see below, the expenses for the administration, that's right below it,
yes,
plus the operations, which is below that, plus the maintenance, plus the expenses out of the grants, plus the other category. That all rolls up into that top of page 106.
Okay, so then
then we-
I have a question then. The transfer, if you look at the total interfund transfers of 1,046,000 at the first table, the other number in the other budget is higher.
thank you, they should match.
They
But
should
the other one
match,
says
there's got to be another component in there that we're not seeing in the
I
first
think we're
table.
missing a column.
You're a good point.
Because the transportation fund other budget summary, where it says 1288000, says FY '24 adopted.
Oh,
No,
So that probably didn't get updated in OpenGov. We have to relink these every year.
Okay,
So
so
We'll
we
create
need
a new
another column here because we're looking.
no, the
No,
whole,
we
that's,
just need
that's
to-
that's the same chart that you would see in last year's book. So
Okay.
that needs to get updated completely.
so but the interfund transfer from the summary should be the same number here?
Correct.
Okay,
And if you look in OpenGov, it's
that's
correct.
correct.
It's just the linkage of that report is not
Okay.
correct on page 107.
And that comes from the parking fund.
I cannot decipher OpenGov, so I'll have to have individual.
The
Totally.
interfund transfer comes from, that's admin charges. We're looking at the expense side.
Okay.
From the revenue side, it's the
Yeah,
parking.
I'm sorry, we're in
That's okay.
expenses, yeah. Okay. Other budget summary expenses. Maybe add the word expenses, I keep screwing up there. Okay,
Yeah, can we add the word expense to other budget summary?
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we'll correct and provide a
Yeah,
corrected
we need
page.
to correct the sheet, yeah, okay. Okay. Now we're talking revenue, other. This is the main thing. This
Give us
is,
a number so we can figure out what you're looking at.
okay, it's a parking fund, the next box, parking fund budget summary. Parking fund budget summary revenues. Okay, this is revenues. So we have revenues, we show, what is that first line doing? It goes, is that show the deduct in, we have 6 million, approximately 6 million projected in fiscal year '24 versus 247,000+ in fiscal year '25.
Change?
Yeah, what is that math?
Can you, where are you? Sorry.
First line item
Page
of the
107.
parking fund budget summary revenue box. Page 107.
the fourth chart down.
In the budget book, Katie, Ms. Connolly.
The majority of that, 5.82 is AMR parking downtown.
Wait a minute, we're not, no, I'm sorry, it's the fourth,
So the total is 6 million, right?
no. Oh,
What is the
In
top
24.
line, what is the top line versus the 3 lines underneath it?
We're talking parking revenues, right?
Correct.
parking
The
revenue.
revenue line, 25 proposed, is 247,500.
Right?
There's a little number there that
Yeah.
compared to a big number from last year.
Yep,
Yeah.
the 6 million number
Yeah.
in 24 projected, right? That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
what is that? Yeah.
So 5.8 of that is AMR parking downtown.
And how can we find that in Open Go? So we can look
Parking
at the-
revenues, it's almost, it's towards the bottom.
Just cannot find.
So that's taking out,
Okay,
The
so
P3?
can I think I know what's happened here. In the 24 lines, you're seeing the revenue that's coming in from AMRP and the downtown parking district, and all those trust fund releases that I talked about, they're in that top line. When we look at next year, the 25,
yes,
we've actually got it down in the bottom line.
that's where it is. It's,
Yeah, I think that with the way we classified them in our Munis system this year, they're coming out on a different line item on this table.
okay.
And the projection for next year, that 4 million has those revenues in there. So I think if you combine those two lines, you're going to get a better comparison year over year.
And that, because it's such a round number, that's based on a goal estimate?
The $4 million is, you remember the waterfall was about $2 million.
Yeah.
So that's the $2 million twice. The waterfall was a 6-month payment.
Okay.
So that's for that. The other numbers up top are the other sources of revenue.
Yeah.
From the other garages, the other parking spaces, and the top line, I'd imagine maybe like all the other miscellaneous revenue sources that we have in that fund.
Okay, so in your judgment, when we propose fiscal year 2025 revenue, is that a conservative or optimistic number, or is that something Mr. Kemp wants to comment on? Don't feel
So
pressured.
I think if you look at how we're projecting for this year, I think it's reasonable. We can only guess what we can guess, and things are, and the gateless entry, maybe that will help with
Again,
revenue. Go ahead.
what I'm getting, okay, so we have one more box, expenses, and I think, okay, yeah, what's the contractual services there under parking fund? Is that SP Plus and?
That's SP
Yeah,
plus.
okay, that makes sense. And then we have a debt service, that is the P3?
No, that's not the debt on the, that's not debt service on the P3 debt. That is the debt service from all previous parking bond sales.
Okay,
Plus, when we refunded the sub-debt related to the P3,
Yeah.
we took on the debt. So
Yeah.
yes, I don't
Yeah.
call that P3 debt now, it's our debt,
yeah,
but we refunded the P3 debt. So it's the two pieces, the previous debt issues before we even contemplated the Hillman P3. And then what we did with the sub-debt and refunded it and took on our own bonds. So
how much of that is the sub-debt?
I can't tell you that. I have a table
Most of it,
that has it. If you want me to give you that detail, I can.
Okay, so to simplify this, how about I ask this question, how much of, where do I see the parking revenue and where do I see how much of it is going to transportation?
So,
Yeah.
so,
How much of parking revenue is going to transportation? and
so
where
if you
does it
look in
show
that table that we were just talking about,
Yeah.
where you saw SP Plus's expenses in the debt service,
Yeah.
the last line there is interfund transfers. Just go ahead and give the breakout of those two interfund transfers.
Just to clarify, you want to see the parking money that is being transferred out of parking into transportation.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's the revenues for transportation.
You'd see it in revenues.
Expense out of parking.
Expense out of parking and revenue and transportation.
Correct.
Where would those be?
So in transportation, other revenues, a transfer from off-street parking.
Wait a minute, I gotta get there now, my brain is just
It's okay.
dying. Transportation, what page?
105, right?
It's the first table.
Page 105. Transportation fund revenues, that other revenues category,
Yeah,
2.6 of that 2.7.
there it is,
Is-
yeah, okay.
Yep, and on the parking expense side,
Okay, so 2.6 is, yeah. You know where you see this in more detail is the ACFR, kind of.
Why is it
but
2.6 when it's in
2.7?
parking, it's 3.3 million?
Because there's another, so when you look at parking,
There's other stuff
and you
in it.
see that number, 3.3 million,
Right?
that's what Katie was just about ready to go into, what the components of that are.
the 3.3 million in the parking expense interfund transfers, the breakdown, 2.6 transfer to transit. We have admin charges within this fund as well, it's 181,000. And the remaining 517,000 is a transfer to capital projects.
All right.
Where were you looking? Where
So
where is
page
that?
107,
Yep,
interfund transfers in the last chart.
yeah, okay.
That 2.6 that you're looking for as an expense within the parking fund is there.
That's where that is, the 2.6.
Yep. But I was just explaining that there's more components
Yeah.
within that number.
So plus or minus 2.6 is, okay, okay.
And can you trace this in OpenGov, Ellie? Because
Yes.
it would,
So
it's very
go-
hard to figure out where to go to find this parking decomposition. So you're looking at 3.3, you decompose it to some portion that's going to be transferred to transportation, and some other part of that 3.3 is going, who knows where.
So, no,
Capital.
it's categorized. So in the parking expense, if you're looking at OpenGov,
Yeah, I'm
left-hand
trying to-
column, go all the way down, almost to the bottom, parking expenses there. If you expand those carrots, it gives you the
Parking expenses, I'm there.
interfund transfers, expand that carrot.
Well, it won't stay. Come on, why can't I get it to stay? All right, so I see go bonds.
No, that's debt service. Expand the interfund transfers carrot.
You hit the wrong carrot, I think. You hit the debt service carrot and not the transfers carrot.
Carrot.
I'll come over and help.
I'm glad I'm not on the finance committee.
Well, I think to use Vicky's terminology, I just want to see what story it tells. And it tells me that we're sustaining transportation by 2.6 million or thereabouts from parking. However, what sticks out to me is path forward in looking at ARPA money gone. And that's a $2.6 million exposure.
I think we're talking about somewhere around 2 million. The 2.6, the money that we send from parking to transportation, we've always sent that.
Oh, I know that.
So the other,
And this
there's
is
now,
more than
there's
usual.
now 2 million more.
It's more than
Yes,
usual, yeah. No, I get
that
that,
needs
yeah.
to be sent. And, you know, we tend to budget conservatively, so hopefully there'll be some savings on the expense side and transportation, so maybe they won't spend the whole thing, but
Okay, so this
there,
is
it's
going
going to be around $2 million that we have to resolve for FY '26.
Also, it's going to capital projects.
And maybe
Administrative charges,
parking revenue
which is-
will be generated to offset a lot of that, even with the gateless system and any other thing we do with rates, maybe we can handle that through parking rates.
You know, it's funny,
But-
this is what I don't understand about government budgeting, because in the private sector, in my world, we would hold that money somewhere, you know, like knowing that we're going to have a $2 million shortfall, we would find a way to hold it in, you know, for example, non-allocated or something. It's just kind of scary.
So the
going in
parking
with that
fund right
exposure.
now, parking fund has a fund balance, per se, right? Because we took
Right.
in a lot of cash from
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
trust fund liquidations, they're sitting on a cash balance and parking fund.
I got
You could move that over for transportation, but again, it's not going to reoccur.
No, I know.
So we have to build it in somehow to the revenue side. In a private company, you have an increase in your costs, you offset it by increasing your prices.
Yeah, no, we can't.
So
So speaking of which, path forward is that we have hired a parking manager who Director Moore, this parking manager, we haven't seen the job description. We'd like a copy of that because it really has to be somebody that's going to be able to figure out our parking rates on a dynamic pricing model.
Right, yes. Marcus Moore, Director of Transportation. Madam Chair, yeah, I can definitely give you a copy of the job description and the successful candidate who has a background in finance.
Okay. Oh, well, there you go. Okay. Well, that's reassuring.
So, and that will be in our
It's in-
shared files.
Yeah, and you hired this person?
Yes.
Okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
verbal offer has been extended as of yesterday, still got to come in and, contingent offer, I should say.
Okay.
It'll be a couple weeks.
The other question, which you can't answer, is there any possibility with this governor, because of his interest in transportation, I thought, is there any hope for next year? Is it dead end, that's it, no more grant, boom, gone forever? I don't know, that's where we need a lobbyist.
Let me comment on that. Remember when Director Moore was talking about the HB 950? Basically, that ensured that the state actually sets the minimum contribution to transit based upon FY 2024. Our proposed FY 2025 budget takes into account a reduction of 40% for a large urban grant. So moving forward, we don't expect that to happen given HB 950. Okay. We are also aware that M.MTA is trying to come up with a new way of allocation system based upon ridership, service hours, and stuff like that. Early indication that we may get extra more than our even FY 2024 funding level for large urban. So whilst we are looking forward to about $2 million deficit once we use the upper through the county, for FY 2026, it may not be exactly the $2 million. Our expectation that given HB 950 and the new methodology, we may get a little bit more, but not substantially enough to offset that. Having said that, the department will continue to look for grant opportunities. Okay. Most of these grant opportunities from Federal Transit Administration are for capital items, like the ferry or zero-emission vehicles. So that makes it very difficult. What we really need are grant funds for operating, where the large chunk of our expenses actually do occur. Just for your information. So we do expect a little bit more increase moving forward from FY 2026. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Okay, thank you for that patience. Do we want Mr. Kemp to come up and talk about path forward on Park Place, or would you like to come up, Mr. Kemp, and just talk about path forward on Park Place and what we're doing there to have some light at the end of the tunnel here? Couldn't get off the hook there.
Yep, sure. Good afternoon. John Kemp, Regional Manager with SV Plus. So as mentioned, Park Place is the first step in transitioning the off-street parking facilities from archaic, difficult to maintain, expensive to maintain, gated and ticketed systems to a gateless one using license plate recognition cameras to facilitate both the monthly parker experience and also the transient parker experience. So we are starting, there's some infrastructure work that actually begins tomorrow. The vendor will be on site, we have begun to collect information from monthly parkers at Park Place, which is going to be important so that they experience a smooth transition from one in which they use an access card. We're all familiar with that. to one in which the vehicles that they have are registered with the system so that the cameras read them as monthly parkers as they come in and out.
Okay.
And then on the transient parking side, you obviously don't have a plate registered until you do it. So you are recognized on the way in, and then you, similar to the experience at Hillman Garage, you will choose an amount of time, associate your payment with the license plate that's been read, very simply in an easy user interface. There'll be a credit card payment option for those who don't want to take that path. And then also a validation system, which is all integrated as well.
Mr. Kemp, when does your contract expire, SP Plus?
And middle of, so FY, I guess that would be 20, I don't know what the FY is, middle of 2016, so June of 2016.
Oh, so has been.
I'm sorry, 2026, yeah.
2026.
Okay, okay.
It was a 10-year.
All right.
It
Thank
started
you
in
for that.
2016.
That's good. Finally, some good news.
I know, I mean, it has power. And you're constantly looking at ways to increase revenue, I know you are.
Yeah, we actually, yes, I have some good ideas that we will, as you're aware, and some folks here are aware, we meet regularly with members of the mayor's office, transportation committee, and yep, we've got some.
And the new person then.
I think there are definitely some opportunities in town that are yet to be tapped.
Thank you. All right, I sort of hogged it up, but can I ask little questions? I just have for your presentation. I know last year we did those amendments, right? But was one of them lighting of the bus shelters? And what is the status of that?
Yes, Alderwoman. The solar panel lighting
Yes,
for the bus
that.
shelters, the RFP is actually with procurement now. We hope to get that RFP on the street soon, and that can happen. As I made mention earlier, that once we get the bus shelters lit, we'll get an additional 5% as far as the non-fare revenue, which is the advertising that we get in the shelters itself. And then, later on, as we start looking at ways to increase our bottom line non-fare revenue, replacing some of the other high-profile bus shelters, especially along West Street. 10, 12 years ago, we partnered with COA, what is it? Creative Outdoor Advertisement, not City of Annapolis, Creative Outdoor Advertisement. We get those in, and with Vector Media, we'll get a greater line share of revenue. Because that way that contract was set up, we really needed shelters back in 2012. They came in and put 30 in, and we got 0 from them the first 5 years, the way the contract read, and that the 6th year is very little. So we just need to replace shelters, but remember, a shelter can cost $12,000. Then we got to put it in. We can do the math for the 30, a few $100,000. But that's something to really look at, because the revenue dollars, there's 6 figures to be made right now at 55%. So getting us up to 60% with more high-profile, better real estate that we can do will definitely bring that up quite a bit. So yes, to answer your question about solar panels, yes, that's in the works.
Okay. And then my last question is, what is the status of the micro transit
Good.
effort?
We're working on. That is working.
And what's in the budget? I mean, how far do we go with it in the budget?
Yeah, based on our contract with the company that was chosen, the successful vendor, we can go out about 3 years, I think, with it, because after 2 years, we'll start to look at the operation of it. So a lot of the front end loaded, as far as we're leasing their software, we're buying the hardware, so we have our tablets and all. So doing the programming right now, it is our hope to have that, get on the street, the pilot part of it next month. And then as we expand further. But Kwok, if you want to tell a little bit more specifics on that, we can.
Especially the buses.
Yes.
The buses that we're going to chop in half.
Thank you, Kwok. Yeah, for the micro transit, we are working on programming for the software. We have secured the tablets that will contain everything to receive trip requests, and also the app that the customers will be able to see or use it to request the trip, see that the bus is on its way. Director Moore did make mention of 6 small cutaways that we are procuring. that will actually be used for the microtransit. But before they got here, we do have enough, I think they are 20-foot cutaway buses that will be used in the meantime for the microtransit. Based upon the budget, we were able to secure a 3-year deal with our current vendor, the one that we did select, IT Curves, for about $65,000. So we are currently under budget. As you did back in about 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that was about $90,000 project. So we are looking at spending about $60,000 and hopefully expand it to the entire system. I think there was a question about the TDP. The TDP, that is the Transit Development Plan, will look at how to integrate the microtransit in our entire service area. Our concept is to have a hybrid system where during the morning and evening peak hours, we will run both the microtransit and then the fixed route. In that case, the microtransit will serve as a feeder system from areas where we don't have the fixed route. Then during the off-peak, we can only run the microtransit, which is an on-demand service. So hopefully that will also cut some cost. So that's where we are. We are excited to move this one forward. We are using the same software also for the ADA paratransit, which currently we are testing it in-house. So that part is done. We are working on the general on-demand section, which will be for the general public. As you know, for the ADA, you have to meet certain qualifications before you can use that service. So it is a similar software that we'll be using for the general on-demand service, which is nicely called microtransit. So that's where we are at this time.
Okay. So there's really no limitations, the budget isn't limiting you right now? The fiscal year 2025 budget isn't limiting the program?
No,
It's not reflected in the 2025 budget. It's a separate budget that has been approved, appropriated already. Yeah.
And Alderwoman Tierney, just to kind of piggyback on the TDP, the questions you had and what Dr. Duell was saying, the transit development plan is required to be done every 5 years. And KFH is what MDOT has selected through a bid process over the last few years. So they've done our last two. The last one that was presented to you was 2019 for adoption. So we had our kickoff meeting with them back in late February. So they interviewed us and took a look at, the 120-page document that they presented to look at where we are now to do a kind of a status check on operational needs and demands and structure. And as Kwaku made mention, they're going to take a look at a lot of things that are out there as far as how we're operating fare-free, routes that we actually are doing. And in the next several weeks, they'll reach out to formulate the focus groups, surveys, and everything else they do to put together their transportation planners located in Baltimore as KFH. So you'll be hearing more from them, through Transportation Committee meetings here, Transportation Board, and all, but it's very inclusive. The county's going through theirs at the same time. That is Anne Arundel County. So it's very exciting to kind of look at how we're doing, the health of our system, and how we can move it forward to be more interconnected with our partners.
If I may add, especially the fare-free, as you know, is being back and forth. Yeah. So we want the consultant to take a closer look at the fare-free transit system. What does it mean in terms of cost to the city in view of all the projected deficit that we are talking about here? So we want a much more detailed analysis of the cost implications of a fare-free transit system. So that is one of the main areas we have asked the consultant to actually look at. When Montgomery County thought about it, they actually did a study and came out that it is not, they don't have the funds to support a fare-free county-wide transit system, but they had other alternatives. So similarly, we would like our consultant to take a closer look at the fare-free transit as some of us have as we have heard before, so that we put that question to rest, whether the city has the financial capacity to be able to provide fare-free transit system. And we believe that if it's fare-free, it's not going to be for 1 year or 3 months. It should be permanent. So we need to think about the long term. We did an initial projection of 10-year cost, when I think the board was talking about it, and that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we are not looking at just the short term, the long-term financial implications of a fare free transit system.
Yeah, that came from the pandemic where people put it in as a pilot and all,
Yes,
so,
it's
yeah.
hard to take something away and then
I
put it
know,
back.
once you have it, yeah.
And one of the things, there's like kind of a three-spoke wheel. If you just look at the revenues that are brought in by fare, and then as we made mention of the our organizational paid fares from DGS and from the county, because it's fare-free, why would they pay us?
Right.
So they're each about 300,000. So it's very close to $1 million, 800 and some odd to 900,000 that we need to come up with if we go fare-free. So those are things to think about. But you look at the population that really needs it, and how do you address it? Because just because it's fare-free, do you bring on new riders, or do the riders ride more?
Right.
So what does that
It's
mean?
different opinions on that, yeah. I'll leave that up to the transportation chair for discussion. Questions, thank you for your patience. I think it was really important to go through those numbers. Alderwoman Finlayson, yes.
Yes, thank you. Two short questions. One having to do with your maintenance. You mentioned that you do all of your own maintenance. So are you not part of the fleet maintenance effort to consolidate everything, or is it all in your shop?
Well, we don't do all of it because some things have to go out to the Johnson Truck or Gillick itself. But we do have a maintenance shop that we can do quite a bit of our own. So even some of our admin vehicles or smaller vehicles, we do need to send out, but we can do quite a bit. So remember, that's part of the monies that we get from the state, and they will come back to make sure the asset that they paid, the state's paid 80%, excuse me, the federal government's paid 80%, the state 10, our local share 10%, is getting the useful life plus some of what we have. A heavy-duty bus is generally 10 years, 350,000 miles. Some of our buses, like a 4311, which is a hybrid diesel, has been around for 13 years, just because of how we've kept it up. So what we're making mention of, because of supply chain issues, we're getting some of the buses that we were due 2 years ago. So that's why the health of our buses, we're getting some of them, like there's one, El Dorado, it's a heavy-duty bus. We should have had it about 18 months ago. We got about 3 weeks ago. So we're good for the next 5 or 10, 7 years, because remember, you can't replace them all at once. So there's a schedule of when they're coming in. Our oldest bus is about 2011, I think so. So when we're looking at that one, that's the bus that you guys have seen or been on more often. That's we call it the show bus, the trolley bus that's on the state shuttle. The other ones after that are going to about 2014, 15. So you can see those, next year, 2025, 2026. But we've been able to get more than 10 years out of them, more than 350,000 miles, because we do have a very good comprehensive plan. There's a 3-schedule prong of maintenance of a vehicle, A, B, and C. It does us no good to change oil if they says manufacturer recommended 6,000, we do every 3,000. We're not, doing anything better, killing the fly with a hammer. So we try to make sure we stay right on course, that we're not spending more resources thinking we're doing something better. But we are maintaining, we're looking at a lot of things and making sure things are just maintained in a way that we can get 12 years. Mm-hmm. So we have a pretty good crew that's continuing to be trained, and as we get new type of buses, especially electric, the training needs to go up, because we don't have any now. We have carts, and the city probably has 4 under Public Works, but that kind of training, for electric vehicles, and of course for other safety issues dealing with the fire department and all, how we need to handle the batteries. It's a lot of batteries.
So do you have funding in your budget for that new training for the more technologically?
Yes, as Director Dickinson said, each departments have their own training, and then HR has the overall big picture, mainly customer service stuff. But our specialized training, a lot of our grants, we get about 0.5% should be going to training for our employees. So you want to speak a little closer?
Yeah, there is a federal requirement that a certain percentage, about 0.5% of all your federal grants must be spent on training and education for all transit employees, including maintenance staff and operations and administrative staff. So we put that under administration. So every year when we are doing the city budget, we actually go back to look at what is the total federal dollar that we did receive, and based upon that specific requirement, we will actually calculate the dollar amount to put it for our training and education budget. On top of that, we are a member of Transportation Association of Maryland, which is a group of all transit operators within the state of Maryland, big and small. They do also offer a lot of free training for us at no cost. At their conferences, they do offer training. We ask our maintenance staff to participate at no extra cost. So with this, we are able to keep up with the latest technology that will come with any new bus. And when we actually procure any new bus, there is line item in the order form that says training. So they will send, meaning the manufacturer will send a technician here to actually train our staff on the new bus. So we are pretty much covered. And for maintenance, we get a good amount of grant. For that, I say around just about $400,000 for the past few years. So if you look at our proposed budget and the maintenance, you see that the number is a little bit small because the proposed reduction in transit grant, the PM or the maintenance grant was not affected. So again, we are asking for the same amount of money in FY 2025. And thinking of outsourcing, we have looked at it before. There are a lot of issues that we need to address. How do we ensure that the private contractor is not overcharging us? There is no mechanism that we can use. So after looking at all this, we realized, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, that it would be good to actually do maintenance in-house, and where it involves a larger project like the diesel engine by Cummins, then we will send it out for them to take care of.
Thank you. Last question about the defibrillators. It sounds like it would be a great safety feature to have access to them on all of our vehicles. So does one really?
No, okay, the 32,000 is to go on all of the vehicles. And then one for the system, because there are different sizes. You could probably get one very cheaply, like maybe 11 or 1,200, maybe even a little less. So when Captain Edwards and I spoke, he just said he used an average of about $2,000. So that would go on every single vehicle and one for our facility. So that way it's going all throughout the city. So I totally agree with you that it would be good, not just on the one, but if we had to, reel it in a little bit, I would put it on our mobility, and then, on the buses that we only have a few on at a time, or covering most of the city. So you don't have on both greens, all 3 browns or 2 reds kind of thing. I'd have one on each route. So I can probably cut it down to 7 versus the total amount of buses I actually have. But I agree.
Would you then publish it to the community that our vehicles have these devices? So if someone's in distress and you see a bus coming by, you know that you can wave it down for help.
Right. Yeah, and in fact, that was one of the, our PIO actually put something out regarding that back in, I want to say March of last year. So we definitely do some kind of rollout that what's actually happening on our website, all of our social media, and maybe a joint press release with the fire department, how it works. Because obviously we know that the AEDs, you don't have to be an expert on it. It tells you what to do and the prompts along the way to use it to save someone's life. And they have been determined to have saved lives for folks when they're around. But totally agree that it's that safety feature we need to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Thank you very much. I won't keep us. I have one question about the gateless garage. So currently at Hillman, if I go in to the garage, I can pay by Park Mobile. I can pay by, for lack of a better word, premium, or I can pay at the kiosk. Those 3 options, right? But if I want to use my 2-hour citizen resident parking pass, then I have to use the premium parking app in order to do that. That's the only option for that. Is that correct?
That is correct, and Mr. Kemp can explain how that'll work in the other garages with the
That's
QR code.
where my lesson was, my question was leaning towards. So
Yes.
when Park Place becomes gateless, I'll be able to use Park Mobile SP Plus app.
Yeah, Sphere, yeah, it's a Sphere, or essentially think of it as parking.com. Parking.com is the engine through which transactions will be driven, or a kiosk.
Or a kiosk. So those are three different options for me to pay.
Well, not Park Mobile. We don't have a plan to use Park Mobile up at Park Place at the moment. It's unnecessary.
Okay. So we spent a year and a half trying to educate our residents to use Park Mobile, but we won't be able to use it in that garage.
Are the residents using Park Mobile to validate their parking? So they're using Park Mobile, not premium.
I mean, in Hillman, I can use Park Mobile or premium parking or the kiosk. And just as I can use Park Mobile on the street or at a meter, but in Park Place, I won't be able to use Park Mobile.
Well, so certainly for the residents, we currently don't have a plan to use Park Mobile. So the way in which we're going to validate the parking, the validation system is all within Sphere. And so including residential validations. And so that whole process will go through. And when I say Sphere, again, the engine behind it is parking.com. So there'll be some more expansive options over time for folks once we get in there in terms of you could use an app if you want. You could use the parking.com app, or you can just be a guest, scan the QR, establish your session, and then again scan the QR for the validation if you're a validated parker, whether that's a resident, whether that's a visitor to a business, whether that's a juror heading to the courthouse, etc.
Okay. So this is probably not a discussion for this particular forum, but I want to talk about that more outside of this.
Sure.
Along with the city manager. I think that we are,
Going to drive our residents crazy?
yeah, I mean, to try and keep it straight in which parking garage am I in and what
Yeah,
app
we
am I using for my. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear. Do you have numbers, Director Moore, on the dollar amount of the advertising at the bus shelters currently? And I know it's going to increase by 5% once we get them solar operated. Do we have a current?
Yeah, I do have that. Not in front of me, but it was about FY23. I want to say was just a little over $105,000. I think we've been doing between 24 and 28,000. This is just post-COVID. Before that, it might have been a little bit more, so we're rebounding a bit. Director Dickinson, is that sound about right, or Katie? About non-fair revenue for advertising. The monies we're getting in for advertising dollars, about 24,000, was it?
Katie, do you have those tables open?
I'm trying to, yeah.
I think
You
it's
sent it to me last night.
Okay, I can look at it right now. I got the spreadsheet open.
Yeah, because in our proposed budget, it's
Advertising.
101.
125,000.
That was in the FY? Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? 125?
Advertising and transportation fund for fiscal year 25 is $125,000 budget.
Thank you. And we believe that that's going to increase 5%.
For just the
solar.
shelters that we have, that we can put the lighting fixture on. So we'll figure out exactly how many those are. And the advertising dollars that they sell in those shelters would go up by 5%.
Okay. I think that was my last question. Let me just double check. Yes, that was my last question.
Yeah, we can get to the exact numbers because there is a requirement in the grant. Remember, the bus shelters were funded with federal and state funds at 90%. So even contracting it out, we have to do competitive procurement before we select the vendor. So every quarter, when we submit our report, there is a section where we do report the advertising dollars. So we get a spreadsheet from the vendor showing the details, what advertising they did receive, how much they actually paid for, and our share. So there is a much more detail. So we keep track of everything, so we can send it to you what we actually get. Also, at the end of the fiscal year, when we do the FTA report called the NTD, there is also a line item. So there is a very good tracking of all the advertising dollars. Perhaps what Director Moore was saying was that we do have about 30 COA shelters in prime locations. Hopefully we can look for grants and then replace those. So if we get grants, then the city will pay only 10% of the capital cost. And then all the revenues, we keep them. None of the advertising revenues go back to the state or to the federal government. Every penny of it, we keep it to support the operations.
Thank you. Ooh, I'm sorry. I have one more question.
Absolutely.
My last question was about the Park Shop and Dine and who manages that program and advertises for that program.
Each of the parking contractors would, is that correct? The Park Shop and Dine, the rules that go along with it probably came from the city, but how they get them for where they're going to be used will be obtained from the concession premium or SB.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
I think it needs to be run by economic development. Alderman Arnett, do you have any questions?
Oh, yes, I do. So I wanted to ask about free transit, the thing that the Transportation Board keeps hitting us over the head with. And I wanted to ask about regional transit, which I'm beginning to think may be the lifeline that we have to be thinking much more seriously about. And I wanted to get into details about on-demand versus fixed. And certainly when I heard Dr. Dua talk about simultaneous operations, but I have to say that all of that feels like talking about the number of angels on the head of a pin, because I think we go away in fiscal 26. I mean, I'm just devastated by the trends as best I can figure them out. The finance director did warn us about this in her presentation for the fiscal 25 budget, but I'm kind of shocked you're not as terrified about fiscal 26 as I'm feeling. But I think we need to really be talking about that now if there's any prayer of heading off no transit in the city of Annapolis in the fiscal 26 budget. I mean, these numbers are, I think they're very alarming. I'm alarmed. Maybe everyone else thinks it's just going to go trucking along, but it does feel like we're talking about business as usual as we head towards a bridge being out. You know, Key Bridge is no longer there. And so I think at some point, I would like to have at least the council level, if not with the finance committee, which I think is the more appropriate venue, or the transportation committee, what the heck are we thinking about doing? It's really very concerning. But I think this whole notion of having our transportation board continuing to beat us over the head, we should have free transit, and I'm looking at money drying up, and talking about concurrent fixed route and on-demand operations, and that's got to be more expensive, not less expensive. And I'd really like to know the relationship on revenue from on-demand revenue versus expense, as opposed to fixed route where we have a 30% fare box goal. So is on-demand actually something that gives us more revenue as opposed to the fare box revenue? Is it a more profitable? But obviously, I'm raising a lot of questions that I don't think we have time to talk about today. But I also would really like a training session, maybe others on the finance committee, with OpenGov, because I am just totally flummoxed in trying to figure out what's going on in OpenGov. I thought that's where we could get the detail to look at some of these transfers between parking and transportation, and I'm not up to the task, but I think it's very important for us to understand. Sheila, I feel like we're back in the days of Bruce Miller, trying to figure out what's going on. And that's not a slam on our finance department, it's just this is so complicated that it's really hard to figure out what's going on. But I'm quite concerned about the future of transportation.
Those are all good questions, and what we need to really think about are other non-fair revenue ways to generate revenue. But when you're looking at the relationship of microtransit on demand or fixed, they're not going to it's never going to be self-sustained. Nowhere is it in the United States. I don't think we get as high as 60%. One of the things that's very advantageous for microtransit on demand, you go when it's needed. You don't just go every hour. So those are the things, so you reduce some of the things that cause a vehicle to be serviced by mileage or hours on the engine. So you're there for its need. So you're looking at how do you reevaluate transportation services. So when you look at the county, let's just say Anne Arundel County, and you got South County Connector there on Edgewood and Deal and all. We used to have the Gold Route that went there. Before I came, it was 2 buses, so it was like every hour going all the way down to the community college. We put 1 bus, it became 2 hours to do it. You're carrying a handful of people, less than the Orange, which is probably underutilized as well. So there you have that feeder service getting you to the mall, other transfer points, and places to get to Baltimore and all. You want to just make sure your cities are still interconnected, but microtransit on demand is not a replacement. It's definitely not going to make more money. It could actually save because of maintenance cost. But the biggest things are really to look at. I mean, we do get a bit of money. I think it's called with the Uber and Lyft, that's paid to the state, that comes to us, and we do nothing for that to get that kind of money. But we need to look at other, non-fair ways to make, like advertising dollars. What else can we do to sustain? But when you look at before COVID and the monies that were infused called CARES and ARPA and everything else, we were running at the same time. Now they're drying up after 48 months. So we ran before. We'll run, so it's not like, just kicking the can down the road that everything will be hunky-dory or whatever, but. Okay, that's one of the 4, but if we can increase certain things of how we do our partners here with parking, how are we managing that beautiful asset that's limited, especially in downtown? As far as the asset called, parking, it's very much a premium. And what are we doing? Are we in the market, are we properly placed in the market, not to take, more, but to make sure we're doing what we can to get the monies that we need to survive and to prosper.
But here's council why I think we need to be concerned. I see you heading towards Key Bridge. At the same time, in the comp plan, it's talking about a much heavier reliance on public transit because we're going to make the city more dense, particularly along transit routes. And
Russ, your mic's not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing where we are in transit finance and transit planning squaring up at all with where the comp plan is driving us. And I think that sort of doubles the ante. If we're headed towards a financial cliff with the current transit system, and we do have that lesser money coming in from Hillman Garage because of the 3P, but the comp plan is driving us towards higher density and saying it'll be okay because people are going to ride bicycles and they're going to take public transit, and we're not going to have, I'm trying to figure out how we will have transit in fiscal 26. That is a double whammy.
Well, let me talk about the planning and increase in density. In the transit development plan, we actually do land use analysis where we look at where the housing density is going to increase, because there is a positive correlation between the propensity to use transit and your density levels. So when you do the TDP, we take a look at that, and then we map out that these are the potential areas where we can have people to take the transit. So we actually work with planning and zoning. We do request the comprehensive plan, even in its draft form, and then look at the population density and the residential density, and then map it out. Because if you have higher density, and parking is an issue, especially coming to downtown, and the transit is reliable and fast, especially with the micro transit, where it becomes like an Uber type of service. There's more likelihood that you will use that one. So with increase in ridership comes increase in revenue. But because the microtransit is not running at all times, as our Director Moore did indicate, some of your costs will come down. And also looking at the fact that we are thinking of small battery electric buses. In fact, currently we do have grants to buy 2 small battery electric buses. That will help reduce it. We know that generally it's low maintenance vehicles. We are also looking at the small cutaway buses for the microtransit. That will also help to reduce it. So increasing the density basically is preparing the way for increased use of public transportation.
But the problem with that thinking, in my view, is in the 2016 transit plan study, 42% of the rides that originate in the city don't go to the city. And so if more density is people living in the city but working someplace else, I'm not sure that our transit system is geared to satisfy those transit needs, and therefore is not going to speak to the increase in density with people who can't get to where they work or get to their doctors. None of my doctors are in the city anymore. And so if I were to take public transit, I'm out of luck. And so, I mean, I think the comp plan is a good thing, and it should be very provocative, and I think the density and transit really go hand in hand. But I'm not seeing the forward thinking. I think we'll be forced to deal with it in 2020, fiscal 26, because of the finances, but also presumably by then we will have agreed to a comprehensive plan. And then we will have to adjust to that. But transportation, and that's why I'm so big on regional transit, transportation doesn't stop at the city borders. As you well know, I'm speaking to the choir here, of course. But I really think these things have to be interleaved. That's why I'm looking forward to the implementation steps from the comprehensive plan versus performance measures in our providing services. But anyway, I'm speaking too long.
Yeah.
But
Really another discussion we'll have at the
well,
comp plan. We
it's-
have to wrap it up.
yeah.
We've had them an hour longer
It's,
than.
but this is the place where these detailed conversations really do need to occur. We're not going to do it on the floor as we're going through DeJuan's 106 amendments and my amendments.
Well, that's why I went through, I mean, the first part of that is understanding, and that's why I took time to go through the numbers. I think that's what's important. And I think it's also important to know that this shortfall in revenue is not indicative of just Annapolis. This is a national problem with transportation, and for the budget naysayers who we inevitably hear from as we speak, you know, merging with the county, you know, they probably have the same problem. I don't know, but I think I got from this that, you know, you are aware of the potential shortfall. You're looking, first step was you hired this manager to look at optimizing revenue. We have a lot more assets than other jurisdictions in our parking garages, thankfully, and on the streets. If anything we get from this is that we cannot offer free parking. It's a revenue that we need. So if there aren't any other questions, we really do have to conclude this, but I think the director has one. Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, and I think they spoke to it earlier. We talked about a number that was about $2 million.
Yes.
But I will say that based on what I heard here, that House bill that passed will cap mandates the funding continue at the FY '24 levels. I thought it was mandating it to cap it at the '25 levels. So there is a better picture here, and I'll be going back over the revenue numbers with them. It's not going to be 2 million, it's going to be less than that.
So
But it's still an issue because you can't ignore a number half that size, you can't ignore that.
Yeah.
So I just say it's probably, based on what I heard here, we may want to revisit our revenue projections for '25 and make sure we have the right amounts in there so we know how much assistance is needed and we have a better picture of '26.
Okay.
And one of the things I suggested is, I think it was in an email to management, was that we put a group together that addresses this for '26, because it's going to be probably a multi-faceted approach to making sure we have enough to maintain.
Mr. Melanoff?
Yes, and very briefly, and I know Dr. Dua and Jody mentioned it before, when I hear what Jody told me, that may mean 600,000 back to ARPA. That will be freed up in that range.
For '25.
For this year, but that's what we budgeted. To give you an idea, because the questions always come, well, why didn't you put this in versus that? At the very last, this issue came up. So we moved money from an area that we had budgeted into that, to budget the shortfall. What they're saying now is that may free up 600,000 in that range for other purposes.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. All right, well, this was good. I think this was good for everybody to understand. Okay. It's a start, yeah. Let's not end with gloom and doom. So thank you for your patience. Thanks for staying. And if there aren't any, Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Just quickly, I was in and out. We all knew ARPA was leaving. It's like an old friend passing away. So, like any family, we make decisions based on knowing that, ARPA was on hospice. And so you make decisions, and we know it was coming, and so we make adjustments, and we have the right team, definitely starting with finance, to do that. And so I know we'll make it through, so thank you all so much.
Thank you, that was so well said. All right, well, if there aren't any pressing, oh yeah, we have mementos for all three of you.
Sorry.
Don't throw them from the buses. Whoa, John, good one. All right, well, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.